Welcome to the Weekly Whiff podcast, episode number 30. This is a very special occasion as we have brought in a new member of the Motley crew, and so we shall now henceforth be referred to as the Three Musketeers, and this is now canon. So we have with us, as always, Shaun of 28 Posts Later, a man who posts on Twitter semi-regularly and writes the occasional blog post about horror and a wonderful bunch of other things. And we have our friend who we've mentioned multiple times on the pod before, but we finally had the opportunity to bring him in here, and his name is Ben. Welcome to Ben to the Weekly Whiff. You are now here.
I totally thought you were going to say his last name just then.
I just want a quick disclaimer is up until about 30 seconds ago, I thought that I was just a guest feature, but apparently I'm going to be on this continuing. I have to sign a 10-year contract, so I'm fucking stuck here.
Yeah, no, I'm retiring. Ben's like my replacement. I hope you guys enjoy.
What a downgrade. Oh, man.
Oh, okay. So how's everyone's week been? Tell me a story.
Ben, you're the guest. Do you want to go first? What have you done last week? What have you done in the last week since your appearance?
Just had a shitty week at work. My boss is fucking crazy. You know, just kind of like...
Well...
Can I turn this into a therapy session and just like complain about my boss on the fucking...
That's a good one for future job opportunities.
Yeah.
Oh, you're that guy that complained about his boss, aren't you? Online. Yeah, you got the place shut down.
Oh shit! No, I've just been just living my life, having existential crises. You know, the regular.
Yep. Since Ben's a little bit nervous, I'll go into my one. My week. I figured I wanted to just briefly mention it because I did talk about Bocchi last week, and I said that I would bring it up next time in terms of like how I felt about the last episode. Just as a conclusion to those thoughts, the anime is great. I recommend it to everyone. And the last episode was equally as good, and I just wanted to shout that out. But I wanted to talk about something because I was curious if either of you have seen this. I actually watched the first Rocky film, like literally yesterday. Actually, I
haven't seen it.
Have you seen it, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's not what I was expecting at all. It reminded me of what you said about Rambo, Pete, where you it's like kind of entirely different to what you'd expect. Like it's the first one, It's barely a boxing film. It's almost like a romance. Like it's about way more focused about the main character and his love interest Adrian. And it's like the boxing match that gets it started doesn't even come up until halfway through the film. That's when he gets the offer to do the film, to do the match. And the rest of it's kind of just about this kind of almost bum character that's just got nothing going for him. He's just kind of fucking down his luck. He's doing gang jobs for a kind of local mafia. It's really fucking good. I really enjoy it. It's a really great underdog story. I feel like that's kind of understood with it, but I actually loved it a lot. How long has it been since you saw it, Ben?
Probably a couple of years, but yeah, I absolutely love it because it is. Well, first of all, one thing was that it was Stallone's passion project. He did it on a shoestring budget, and he just kind of for ages he was this is a character. He wrote the character and everything, and I think that really comes across is that no one else could have played Rocky. Stallone completely embodies that character and that kind of blue collar kind of just down on his luck dude, but he's also such a heart of gold kind of character, and you can't help but love him.
Yeah,
the way he comes into the pet shop and every day tells Adrian a different joke, and then he's I'll come back with another joke tomorrow, and it's just oh, that's so sweet.
I found it so awkward though, is the thing. They're both so awkward with each other, but it's cute and endearing.
Yeah.
I almost got a bit concerned when he was when she was at his place and he leaned in for the kiss. I was oh dude, is she cool with this? And she seemed cool, but I was alright, whatever, that's fine. But yeah, they both have that awkward energy. It's just weird.
It feels so real though. It doesn't feel at all acted.
Well, it's really nice as well, because it's a story about obviously, no one takes it seriously. Even the match he's getting, it's only it's a luck. They're just oh, we just picked you because we thought you'd be a cool, it'd be good for the image of Apollo Creed and all that.
Yeah.
And he's you only see him training throughout the film. You don't see Apollo Creed training or anything. He's just kind of more focused on the money, not the money, but just kind of the image it'll bring and all that. Even his trainer, when he's watching a news report of Rocky training, fighting meat slabs, you see him be hey, you should come look at the guy you're about to fight. It looks like he's taking it seriously. And then Paul's yeah, I'm taking it seriously too. And then keeps going over contracts. Like it's a cool underdog story because you really feel throughout the film no one like believes in him or takes him seriously, and then he gets this chance and they start training him up. And it's kind of inspiring in that sense because he really does go from like zero to hero, and like you see like all this hard work he puts in, how he takes it seriously, and you get like that. Like everyone knows the Rocky theme, but fuck me, it's really good when they play it in that movie. Like the montage, it's like a
when
great
he's like
one.
running up the stairs.
The stairs.
It's so well, bro. It's such an inspiring kind of film. Also something that I find really that encourages me a lot as a person that wants to make films but has absolutely no resources whatsoever is that it was made on a shoestring budget, and they also did a lot of like corner cutting to kind of like make it, but because of sort of they had a great story and they had a cast of people that really cared about the characters, it came through. Like one of the things is that the famous scene where Rocky takes Adrian to the ice skating rink and they ice skate, apparently it was actually meant to be a full ice skating rink, but they couldn't actually afford to get all the extras, so they just rewrote it to be like he asks them after hours if they can use it, and it actually becomes a much more sort of poignant.
I was thinking that it looked more like just an ice hockey like ring than it did like an actual ice skating ring. Like
exactly. So they just didn't have the budget for it. So, but in a way, it sort of makes it more wholesome.
Yeah, that seems cute. Like, him like running beside her.
And it highlights that they're both from very poor sort of backgrounds. They don't have a lot, but they're kind of just there together.
Yeah,
I just really
and their relationship is cute. Even if it starts to be like, oh, is he harassing her or whatnot? I think in the later half, it's a really cute and endearing relationship. Like you do see how they like do actually care for each other. Definitely. How like he like tries to defend her from like a kind of abusive, annoying brother like Paulie.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Paulie. Fuck.
Yeah, that was he's a real piece of work. Yeah, I liked it a lot. All of them are like on Amazon Prime right now, and I've always kind of wanted to watch them, so I'm like going through like when I'm watching it. I watched Rocky
more and more ridiculous as they go up.
Yeah, I've seen something about like a robot maid or something like in one of them. Like,
bro, shit gets crazy. Once you get to Rocky 3, it's because Rocky 2 still tries to have some semblance of sort of reality, but by Rocky 4, he's like fighting roided up like Russians that are like twice as tall as him, and he's just like, I like you, Adrian.
Oh yeah, there's a fucking. Have you guys heard about the backstory of the actual Rocky movie with Stallone himself? Like this was his star-making role. This is what got him on the map. But did you hear about how poor he actually was to make the film?
No, I haven't.
Do you guys know about some of the lore, like behind Rocky, making of Rocky?
Well, apart from that,
he had this. He went to the same movie studio with the same script. He wrote the script for it. I think he also helped direct as well.
Yeah.
And he went there. He had to sell his dog. He had like $89 in the fucking bank. He had to like sell his own dog to be able to get the movie made. He kept going to like the entire thing of Rocky being dirt poor and the entire movie being made on a like real shoestring budget is actually true because Stallone was that at that time. I think he was a porn star at some point beforehand, like genuinely.
Oh, shit.
He was like, he genuinely was like not making any money. He wanted to get into serious work, and he had this idea of this character, and like he was trying to pitch it to people, and it's it's a boxing movie, so your character always wins. He's like, no, my character never wins. He just gets beaten the fuck up, but he keeps getting up, and that's the whole thing about it. And like that's actually he finally got it made. No, I think it was just we want this superhero or whatever else, but like the way it was made and. Yeah, just genuinely the ability, like he was so dirt poor and that made his career into what he is today, which is still a fucking gangster. So yeah, like Stallone actually went through so much of the shit that you see Rocky going through. He's used to that level of poverty. He's used to that being rejected, no one thinking he's actually worth anything, no one thinking he's got any talent, no one thinking he's got any ability. And so that was actually the reality of the case when they were making the film.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more fucking awesome.
Yeah.
In my mind, at least.
Yeah. It makes it like an actual the whole thing is an underdog story. It's like
exactly.
Adds more weight to it.
And it's been inducted into like the Film Hall of Fame and shit, and like the stairs that you were talking about, they're called like the Rocky Steps in Philly. Yeah. They're all.
They now have a statue of him in Philly.
It's very like it's got like that cheap like feel to it when you watch it, but you can also like tell how much like heart is put into it. Like you can tell everyone's giving it their all. I was reading it apparently like with casting Adrian. I just found it funny when I was reading the Wikipedia like thing for it. But apparently like one of the people that they initially wanted to get for her, they decided she was too pretty to be Adrian. And I was like, imagine being turned down because you're like, yeah, you're too pretty. Sorry, we need someone a bit more like
I need
mousy.
A fucking ugly girl, please.
And, yeah. Then I think it was like they wanted a more mousy person, and I think who they cast of Adrian's perfect. You need that kind of like social awkward like energy and like to like capture
it's
it.
like those fucking bullshit films where they like, you know, it'll be like a teen rom-com or something like that, and the girl that's like not popular is actually like fucking gorgeous, like model level.
Yeah,
They
it's
like have
always so
mousy hair and they're like
well, that's to it as well, because Rocky's like, I don't think he's like conventionally attractive. He's a bit like rough around the edges, and you can like he's like it adds to it as well that they're both very awkward and believable people in terms of appearance. Like they're not like like it'd be. I joke about like the whole like, oh, you're too pretty thing, but you can understand how like in these like these like little like back alley bums, like fucking where everyone's like almost homeless, borderline. It looks like it'd be funny. It'd be a bit goofy if there was a super attractive like supermodel like living living in the back of some guy's house as like with her brother and like working the pet store like on the corner, like that's like barely making any money.
Something that bothers me a lot in films is that like basically films have to cast hot people, like because it's
well, what are we going to watch?
You know, you want to watch hot people. Like if you go to a film, you like if you're going to be looking at faces.
That's why people watch The Whiff for me.
But it's like, you know how there's like, you know, you watch this film where it's like set in some like back alley sort of like some ghetto or something like that, and then all the characters look like fucking 10 out of 10s, and you're just like,
you got like
this is really taken me out of the. This is actually something that I really, and it's kind of a small thing. Like overall, I really like the film. But if any of you have seen Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson,
I have so many mixed feelings in that movie.
Oh yeah.
Your week recap is gonna have to wait a bit.
But that is something that I do have to give credit for, is that the casting, they felt like real people. They didn't.
I agree that the casting is good. It's not a film I hate, but I really just find it grating. Like. I do agree with a lot of the criticisms that it feels like nothing happens for a lot of the film, and that's fine for the first half, but the second half it just starts to drag on me, where I'm just like, what is the point of this shit? Like what? Like the scene where they're riding down the hill in the truck is a cool scene, but I'm kind of like, what is like the point of this in like the grand scheme of things? And I think as well, I could never get over like the creepiness of their relationship and how it's like never really kind of addressed. Like
or,
the like
fact
kind
that
of
he's like 15 and she's like 20 something or whatever.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. And it's never really addressed. Like it's kind of just played off. Like it's normal. Like it's fine. And maybe for the time it wouldn't have been so weird to look at. But it's just like it never worked for me. Like the whole time I was like, I just don't find you two creep me out. Honestly,
just
like
for the context, Pete, is the film sort of like this romantic comedy, but it's basically, it starts with this kid who's like 16 and this girl who's working at the school taking school pictures. She's like 23, 24 or whatever, and he asks her out and then she rejects him, and then they start to hang out more and more and they kind of build this relationship. But throughout it, it's never really addressed the fact that she's essentially like she's like, you know, in a relationship with a minor.
Yeah, well, he brings her to his parents' house, though, doesn't he, or something? And like they don't like really even bat an eye. Like his mum doesn't care. It's like, okay. It's also like, he's kind of the main character, or like he's the main focus. It's kind of about like his charisma and energy, and like how like overly like what's the word? Or not overly confident, but he's like really like ambitious, maybe. Yeah, like he's got like all these ideas, and he always kind of executes them well.
Where does he find the money? Like he just starts this pinball place, and there's no explanation as to how he like starts.
I thought wasn't his family like rich or something. I don't remember. I found it to be a pretty boring film personally. It's just like it felt like maybe if it was a bit like shorter, it would have been better. But yeah, I watched that like last year. It was just kind of like, I don't feel much for this one, but.
Yeah,
I do believe that the acting is good though, and that the cast are like all like really well cast. But it's just kind of like, I think just inherently was something weird for me. Yeah, Pete, how's your week? Before we fucking go off on a tangent about something else, we might go off on a tangent about something you say.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. No, so I've had a pretty good week. Nothing too crazy. What have I done? I think I picked up. I watched the A-Team recently, which I was telling you guys about. 2010's movie film that was like based off the 70s or 80s action series. It was widely popular. It's a really good film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. I actually forgot that it was until I watched it again, and I was like, "Oh, this is dope as hell."
Is like one of the 3 or so films that like when I see them, I just think about you. I'm like, they're Pete's. They're like Pete films. That and Fight Club,
Yeah.
and there was another one, but I've forgotten.
I feel like Fight Club
Fight Club's not really. Yeah, no, it's like it's heady and it's a weird one. I mean, I've talked about it before, obviously, but Fight Club's not like a. Yeah, I don't know. Fight Club's a bit too psychological for me. It's not one I watch. I would watch the A-Team like every other month if I could, because it's just so fucking good. I watch it back to back like all the time because we got it out from Video Easy. And for those playing at home, we got it on DVD when you could still hire DVDs from places and it wasn't out of machines. Yeah. And so I watched that back to back like heaps of times, and I absolutely loved it. It's just so over the top, and it's just so like the writing in it, the lines in it are great. Like Sharlto Copley, who's more better known for like District 9. He's also in Elysium as well. He's the South African dude in those films. Like he plays the crazy like crackpot pilot in this movie. It's just
what's
some of the lines. Yeah, Sharlto.
Murdoch.
Yeah, Sharlto Copley. Yeah, that's his name. Yeah, Murdoch. Yeah. Yeah, he plays Murdoch in the series. Obviously, Bradley Cooper's amazing, and Liam Neeson's just an absolute G. Like, it's so fucking cool to watch in this film.
That was sort of the last of, from about, once he sort of passed, that was his sort of like final, before he switched over into old man mode, like he was like super badass up until about 2013, 14, and then everyone was like, oh shit, like you're really old. Now he's still doing those kind of films, and it's like watching like a fucking... like this really fucking old dude just doing this shit, and you're like, dude, just retire. It's okay. You don't have to. Just chill. You're just so
I
old,
don't know,
dude.
man.
Just chill. Sorry, look at me being just fully ageist in this podcast, bro.
Yeah, no. So I watched that. I watched 1899, the new Netflix series that came out.
Shit. Is that the one that
might have got cancelled, right?
Yeah, got cancelled.
I've heard amazing things, and I actually am planning on watching it because I saw the trailer and I was instantly hooked.
Yeah, I think it was the people that did Dark, right? I was like watching that.
Yeah, it was.
So I'll probably finish that before I watch 1989.
I've heard Dark's way better. I have significant issues with the series. I'm not going to spoil it because you guys haven't seen it, but like the first couple episodes are super psychological. Like it's got a really nice sort of horror thriller kind of theme. It's very sort of psychological. It's quite dark, funnily enough. But yeah, it sort of has this whole shtick of like, what's really cool about it though is there's like 4 or 5 or 6 different languages in the entire show, and all the different characters that are built up in the first couple episodes. Like you've got Spaniards, Portuguese, French, you've got Chinese, you've got English, and you've got German, and you've got Danish as well. So there's all these different languages and all these different characters from all these different backgrounds kind of colliding with each other. French, I think I said. They all collide with each other, and like it's actually a point of the thing is a lot of them can't understand what the fuck each other is saying, but they're all caught up in this crazy head fuck, and so they're trying to communicate and figure stuff out. And it's super fascinating because I've never really seen that in a show or a series or a movie before, where like the languages are actually a real important part of the writing and of how the characters interact. It's super fascinating, man. So I really like that. The setting's really good.
Be a head fuck to direct if you had like all those people with different languages.
Yeah,
you have to kind of
Yeah, Polish is another language. Yeah, it's like it's gnarly. You watch it and you're like, damn, okay. It's really impressive. Like I think they got the cinematography's good. I think that they got the period piece era of it is really good. I've got issues with the story in the back half. But I won't talk too much about it.
Much detail? Or
like, I think
like if you just
I think you just got to watch it, man. I think it's one of those movies you've got to watch. I think there's like, because it's it's very psychological and there's a whole, it's building up towards something, and I think that they were probably planning on doing multiple seasons of it, and it got cancelled. So I'm not sure where it's kind of going to go. I think the ending wasn't as well. Okay, I won't talk about the ending, but yeah, I think the setup is really good. Like the first 3 or 4 episodes are just fire. Like I hate the kind of creepy, weird, psychological horror type of shit, but it's got a lot of that going on. It's super fascinating. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it loses it in the back half, and I think you got to watch it to sort of get a really good feeling for it. Normally, I'm very happy to spoil shit, but only when everyone's everyone on the pod's seen it, so I won't talk about it too much. So that the A-Team, I recently bought a PS4 controller. Like that's why I was late, and I'm gonna play some.
We were just talking shit about you before you came. Yeah. It's like you're not like coming into a studio. All you have to do is pick up your phone. Like, go, bro. So I'm spilling the tea behind the scenes drama, bro.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
Each other off cam.
Yeah, but you're gonna laugh at me because I bought it so I could play Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I was gonna get the PS4 remaster for Crash Team Racing.
Racing games.
Oh, dude, I'm so keen. I'm
I
pretty
got
excited
into
for that.
racing games through
Imagine
the.
buying a PS4 controller and not the whole racing like wheel setup
Yeah,
thing for
yeah,
Crash
like
Team
me.
Racing,
What
dude.
the
Like
hell?
seriously.
For an arcade racer with Crash Bandicoot. Bro, there is a level of drugs. There's a level of drugs you need to be on if you're going to get a racing wheel to play Crash Team
This is
Racing,
the
bro.
thing, though. So Pete came and visited me, and I showed him my setup of the racing wheel and the video game and stuff, and he gave me so much shit. Like he was like, "You fucking nerd! I can't believe you're fucking doing this. You got this whole
How many
setup.
racing
You
games do you
absolute
play?
incel." And then
Intel.
one day later, Pete's on this for like 6 hours in a row, being like, "Dude, this is fucking incredible! Holy shit!" Like he could not get off it. And every time we were like hanging out, just like having good chats and stuff like that, he was like, "Dude, we should do the racing game." It was like, like a 6-year-old that's like, "Can I play games on your phone?"
You guys are both fucking lasers.
No, but
A
I
whole
felt
like
so
racing arcades thing
emancipated.
is like one of the worst setups you can, like the lamest setups you can get.
What are you talking
Obviously,
about, bro? I got
the
like the
coolest one is
wheel. I
actually
got
getting a fighting cabinet, obviously.
a fighting
Oh,
cabinet.
Jesus.
What is a fighting
Fighting
cabinet?
game, like just like the arcade cabinets for fighting games. That's definitely
Oh,
the
okay,
coolest
yeah.
one you can get.
I mean, yeah, probably in terms of like in your room, I can see like a classic like fighting cabinet looking really cool. Like,
Yeah,
big.
it costs a lot of money though, and like a lot of energy. Not worth it at all. Honestly, they're all lame.
It's a lot of urge. It's a lot, yeah, dude. Like just regular bedroom protection is cheaper than an arcade cabinet. Let's be honest.
I just don't want to have to fucking like. If
All
I'm
of them
playing
are
a
going to stop
game,
you from having sex. Let's just put
if
it
I'm
that
playing,
way.
well, I'm gonna stop me from having sex. So who cares? I'm gonna. If I'm playing a game, I don't want to have to fucking get out of my bed, go into like some whole seat with like a steering wheel, and have to fucking turn everything on, or stand up to a cabinet and play a fighting game. I just want to fucking flop my ass down on a couch and fucking grab my controller and turn it on, and that's it. I don't need a whole setup. That being said, if they made a innovative hack and slash setup where you can actually stand and play it like manually, like
Hell
VR,
yeah.
sign me the fuck up.
Bro,
I would
that'd
buy
be
that.
sick. Bro, hell yeah.
Watch me executing
The funniest
combos.
thing about that is literally like they build that. Shaun buys it. Like he sells a kidney and he buys that shit, and we do not hear from him for 3 months, and he comes
Yeah.
out of there jacked as one of the video game characters.
Honestly, that could be a game changer for exercise. I could actually see that being a thing.
It really could. It would get me off my fat ass.
Yeah, same. Oh, man.
What I
Yeah, so
described
that's
is basically VR.
That was my question actually. Is so I've been considering getting a VR setup. Do you think this is a stupid idea, or do you think this is something that's actually worthwhile? Like, is VR sticking around, and is it actually any good? Like, I haven't played enough games in it to. I don't know.
I
How you
don't-
guys.
I haven't played any VR games. I've got a friend who has like a VR headset and has like and uses it every now and then. And just from like it's a kind of iterated opinion, but like I what I understand is that people think who have VR are like it's cool, like it's a good thing, like they're glad they have it, but there aren't a lot of games. Or
Yeah.
it's kind of like a matter of game. There are games I'd want to play, like I want to play Half-Life Alex for sure, like at some
Yeah,
point
and
when
that's
like
the
that's
main draw for me.
that's like the I think that is the main one for a lot of people that want to get VR. Beat Saber looks cool. I think Beat Saber
Yeah.
like looks like a fun kind of like exercise game. But then after that, I'm just kind of like, there's nothing else I really care about. Like maybe I'd
Yeah.
play Resident Evil 7 VR just to see what it's like. But
Yep.
even then, it's like not like high on the list. And from what I see as well, I just don't think. I think VR is always going to be a side thing. I don't think it's ever going to be like at least not within like current time. I don't think it's ever going to be like a main thing where games are like exclusively commonly coming for like VR. Like we get Half-Life Alex and a few games here and there, but I think it's just like the whole setup and all that, like how you have to set
the
it up to
cost
play
is
it and all
so
that.
expensive just to
It's kind of like what I was joking about just then with like, oh, people just want to sit down, but like realistically, not like the preferred thing is just like putting a console on or having a PC and just like sitting down and playing it.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll ever fully take off in like a way that consoles have, but I think it'll probably get better and better over time and have more games
Yeah.
and like maybe it'll be cheaper to get at a certain point as well. It'll always be kind of pricey, but maybe it'll start to like cheapen out at some point. But
Yeah, that's true.
it's something I'd like to have, but even in my current place, I don't have room for it. That's like the big thing. Is like, do you have the room for it?
It's also similar sort of thing in terms of just like, and this is a good question, is like sort of how far will humans be like we always want to sort of up our entertainment and stuff like that, but at some point do we also reach this threshold where we're like, okay, this is sort of too much fucking stimuli and I want to just like chill kind of thing. Like it's a similar sort of thing, like, you know, like
Ben
every
really
night
brings in
you
the
can sit
existential
down.
dread for the podcast.
No, but like for example, like you know, I could like, and this is actually a problem I often have is I'll sit down and I'll force myself to watch like something that's been reviewed well, kind of thing, like in terms of a film or something like that. But sometimes, like, I do just need to like watch Boss Level of the fucking A Team, and there's a real niche for that kind of stuff just to switch off your brain
Absolutely.
and just chill. And in a similar sort of way, I feel like VR's like, you come home from work, it's like, do you really want to jump into this completely immersive shit where everything's right in front of you in 3 dimensions and stuff? Like, I mean, it's cool, but it's like, fuck, that's exhausting, kind of thing. And
I
sometimes
think
you
it's a
just want
huge
some
fucking
entertainment.
gimmick, personally.
You really think it's a huge gimmick? Because I feel like it's
Yeah, I
stuck
do.
around too long to be
I
a
think it's a gimmick to an extent, but I think games like Half-Life Alyx are kind of making it not as much a gimmick anymore. But that's just Valve as a whole. Like they're always
Okay,
kind
yeah.
of pushing the gaming medium. But I
Yeah,
do agree
yeah.
that to a point, it's kind of like I said. I think it's always going to be a side thing, but I think that it will get. I do think it'll improve over time and maybe be more manageable. I personally don't think I'd be able to use it. I get migraines a lot, and I have a feeling that having a screen in front of my fucking eyes as I'm playing like VR
for
would probably
hours on
really
end.
fuck me up. Yeah,
fucking 5 centimeters from your eyes.
it'd always be something I could only play for like an hour at most. I think like a day.
Our eyes
And
aren't fucked up enough as it is with screens. Like, sorry.
yeah, exactly. Like I get migraines like fucking playing hack and slash games and remembering combos and all that, and fucking like blood oozing out of my eyes. Like Pete said like last episode, thinking about the invincibility frames for Dark Soul bosses.
Dreaming about them, yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, dude. I have like I personally my take on VR is it's actually more of a technical and a creation. Like it's more from a creative and a technical standpoint than anything else. So you use Half-Life Alyx as an example, and from what I've seen, actually fair rebuttal there. But when you normally go out of your way to paint any medium, let's just assume with writing you got to do the words, right? With anything visual, with a film you need music, characters, sound, like shots, everything else. With a video game, it needs to be inherently interactive, which means that you need to then be able to interact with it, and we usually use controllers as our plug and play for that. VR requires so many more different like aspects and so many different aspects and capabilities and thought put into it from a game design perspective that it's like very, very difficult to pull that off well, which is why I think a lot of VR games are either sort of, very small corridor simulator, they're walking simulators, right? Like you walk through and you get spooked, or you walk through and you pick this up and you move this around to here, or whatever it is. Shooters kind of that match in, but they still have a very arcadey feel to them. Like you kind of feel like you're playing one of those deer hunting games at like the old arcades.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like it's like a more sophisticated version of that. From a game design perspective, if you're going to create a truly immersive VR experience where you're going to want to stay in there for a while, the level of parameters, the level of player freedom, and the level of gameplay and the gameplay loop itself has to be thought of, or has to be attacked, or has to be created in such a way that it genuinely takes advantage of all of those different aspects that VR comes with. And I think that in the commercial market at the moment, they really do not have a lot of that. Like you have your Skyrim VR, Doom VR, whatever it is. They kind of function as whatever, like the open world games, or they might not be open world games, or however it works. But there's essentially like it's this game, but on this system.
Like a glorified demo of the game.
Right. And yeah, unless people really start looking at VR as we're making VR, not a video game with a VR plugin, but we're making VR.
Yeah.
I feel, and the level of fucking thought process and the level
what
of
are you talking about? That's what
creativity
Mark
required.
Zuckerberg has been doing for years. He's literally changing the landscape of technology as we know it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know,
was
man.
joke.
I'm just, yeah, I understand. Yeah. I mean, there's an entire thing around that, but
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, just in terms of VR gaming, I think that its single greatest thing is that it can create a virtual reality. Its single greatest drawback for making it and experiencing it is that you're trying to make virtual reality. So it is its own antithesis, and I think that, if there's ever going to be truly great VR games that you absolutely have to buy VR for, like you were talking about with Half-Life, they need to build the game from the bottom up to be a VR experience, or to be in VR rather than just a video game that you port over to the funny new headband thing, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
That's sort of my thought process with VR. So I would say I think it's incredibly overcosted, and the amount of space and the amount of shit, and it's like I don't know, my experience of VR, I've never tried it personally because it just does not look like my thing. But even, it's mostly just a bunch of idiots, like someone's got a bunch of idiots, but like a bunch of dudes, everyone's on the piss or whatever, or they're all hanging out, having a good time at a party. They bust out the VR headset just to fuck with some people, and it gets put away, and it's sort of whatever. It's like no, seriously though, it's a brief and glancing experience. It's a novelty. It's a novelty, but it's not like I'm super into VR, dude. Like I'm constantly in VR. I'm constantly playing on VR. It's like, I bust it out every now and then. There's a bit of a party game, but it's nothing I take too seriously.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you look back in terms of like different aspects of interactive gaming, this is something else I was thinking about as you were talking about it. Like, you remember the Xbox Kinect or the PS3 Go or whatever they called it, or the Nintendo Wii is another example.
PS3 Move, come on.
Whatever. It was very similar shit. Like, it was a gimmick that was built into the game, and yes, you could use it, and yes, you could do the thing. Even the PS4 has that whole you can move the controller around to do stuff, or shake the controller to make the flashlight work.
That was the most annoying thing of Until Dawn, I thought, was the whole
sometimes it was implemented well. It doesn't bug me too much, the controller, gimmickiness.
It's in the controller, and it doesn't take away from the fact that I can still play Tekken and press buttons, and me moving the controller left to right doesn't actually make any differences, right? Like, it's nice to have as a feature, but as the main thing, like Nintendo Wii for me is still going to be one of the most annoying systems to play ever because of the motion tracking, movement controls, and all the rest. And Kinect was a gimmick. What did you say it was? PlayStation Move, like similar things, fun little arcade shooters, but not really something you take too seriously. And so as a result, I think again, it's an extension. It's an add-on. Here's some extra shit that we are, selling you, but. Are you really going to use it day to day with most of the games coming out on this system? No.
Yeah.
So I would caution against it in terms of whatever. Stick with your racing wheel, bro. That shit's fire.
Yeah, you got a racing wheel. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
One of these days, bro, you actually be able to get a driving license. You'll be skilled up. You'll be able to go.
Actually, that's so true. Having one of those and not having a driver's license is way more lame.
Well, Shaun. On the other end, bro, maybe the reason that you are against the racing wheels because you're actually just petrified of learning how to drive.
Yeah, well, I'm not. This isn't about me. This is about Ben having one and not having a license. I fully hate driving and will admit that I hate racing games. If that makes my alignment better, I will say it. I hate driving, and I am against racing games as a whole.
Okay, cool.
I was listening to this comedian the other day, and he was just talking about, he's like, wouldn't it, like, how sad can you get? Like he's like, I want to buy one of those full racing setups, and he was like, it would be so sad, like you don't have a driver's license and all you do is drive like your racing wheel, and then on top of that you're like driving your Lamborghini, and then you're holding like a flashlight, and you're like, babe, stop, I'm trying to drive. Just pretending like in VR that like your girlfriend's trying to give you a roadhead, but you're like focused on driving.
Video games are all about fucking player, like, normie wish fulfillment. Why do you think I play cool hack and slashes with like buff men like jumping around killing people? That's what I want to be. Fucking like, it's all wish fulfillment, Ben. It's fine.
Yeah. That's true.
Ben brings the horny and the existential crisis. You're an excellent addition to this podcast.
Oh, the horny's always been there. It's just been held back.
Sorry to get a bit off topic as well, but
only horny for 2D women, bro. What are you talking about?
Wow, how dare you? There's like 3D women. Like, man,
I like 3-dimensional women.
Yeah, like, come on, guys. Like, I'm like the biggest Virgil simp ever. Come on, guys. Like,
I'll have you know, I like my women in 3 dimensions.
I'll have you know that I don't discriminate between 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. Shit. Everything's fair game.
Yeah, exactly.
Shaun wanted to talk about something serious. Please, Shaun, get us out of here.
I don't know if it was serious. Yeah. No. What's your kind of fictional favorite kind of fictional character, guys? Like, just drive us further into it. I'm kidding. Okay, we could do that as a topic sometime, but that's just going to be me ranting about Virgil for like 10 minutes. Yes, Ben, go on your tangent before we go into the actual topic.
Watching the decline of Meta through their whole like stupid business practice of like really trying super hard to get the VR thing up and running. Like, the fact is, like, they released it and everyone's like, why don't the characters have legs? And they're just like, oh, like they were too hard to like program.
Fucking
And then,
such
like,
a
they
weird
made
guy.
a big update, like, 6 months later, being like, "Hey guys, we have legs." And then I was
Action
watching
legs.
this demo.
Legs!
I was watching this demo, and essentially it was a VR Walmart demo. So what you would do is, in the meta universe, you would go shop in VR. So essentially, you're like walking down these VR aisles and like buying stuff off the shelf, like say like a bottle of wine, and then you're putting it in your cart, and then that actually goes to the actual shop. And it's like, why would I want to simulate shopping? Like, the entire point of technology is to make stuff more convenient, and it's like creating problems and then giving them solutions. It's like, we found a solution to this problem that we made up. Why don't you get the experience? Like, scrolling and buying your stuff on an app is not like immersive. You're like, no one fucking cares that buying groceries is not immersive, bro.
Every day we get closer to actually just being in the Wall-E film, like genuinely.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like, just basically doing all the stuff, but in VR that we could otherwise just actually do.
I just want to state that when you said, like, I've been seeing the decline, I thought you were saying the weekly whiff, and I thought you were just about to, like,
No,
fucking insult us. Like, I've seen the
No.
decline in, like, content quality, like, over the
Oh,
30
shit.
episodes. Like, wow, fuck you. Get off. I'll have you know we only simp over characters every 10 episodes. Once every 10 episodes. Thank you very much.
Oh,
All right. Speaking of, so I thought today,
Speaking of simping.
it's the 30th episode. I thought we'd go back to a similar topic that we did in episode 1, actually, where we, I think it was episode 1, or maybe it was episode 2. It might have been episode 2. But in the early episodes, we talked about our favorite video games. Ben's a bit of a film buff, film connoisseur. He's got like 20 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, fucking film critic, like official empanado. I don't know why I said
he's just talking complete shit. But
And I thought it'd be nice to kind of talk about our favorite films, or what we value in films, like we did with video games. It's a topic I've had saved for a while, and I thought it'd be relevant today. Just talk about what we like in films,
nice.
what we look for, thematically, or like just practically in terms of filmmaking as well, and whatnot. Ben, since you're the guest, do you want to talk about some films you like?
I do need to think about it for a moment. So, will you guys be able to go first? Just because I'm just going to look through my list of films and see.
I can list a few films I like. I don't have a top 10 or anything. I have a top 10 for video games I like, but I don't have a top 10 for films, so it shows where my priorities are. But in terms of films, like, I'd say like 28 Days Later. That's obviously like if you're watching this pod and you don't realize that I like 28 Days Later, you must just not know that it's a film because it's my whole user handle is a reference to it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite film of all time. Other films I'd say I like a lot. Wolf Children, like anime film. I quite like that one a lot as well. And most of Tarantino's films as well. I'm a big Tarantino buff. I think I've come around to thinking that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my favorite. Actually, I quite like that one a lot.
Bro, welcome to the light side. It's true. It's definitely something initially you watch and you're like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I watched it like 3 times now, and it was the second time where I was like, I think I like this one a lot, and then the third time I was like, I think this is my favorite one.
Yeah,
I think the only other one that will be close is maybe Jackie Brown, because I really like Jackie Brown a lot.
I still haven't seen Jackie Brown. That's
really
something
good.
I really should.
It's a slow burn compared to his others, but it's really I really like the characters in that one. Other films I like, Scream. Obviously, I've talked about that. I like the first Scream a lot. I think Midsommar as well. I know you don't like it much, Ben, but I really adore that film.
I need to rewatch it, honestly. I think I need to sort of watch it.
It's not for everyone. Straight up, Midsommar is like one of the few films I like where I would like talk about it in length. But then at the end of the discussion, I'd be like, I totally get it if you don't like it. It is a weird film. Like, it is a fucking weird film, but I really love how it's put together and a lot of it.
Have you guys discussed that at length on this pod before?
No. What, filmmaking or
no Midsommar? Because I would actually maybe
Pete would never watch Midsommar.
Really? If we could convince
are you
to watch
serious?
it, I would love to sit there and chat about it. Like,
I would never force Pete to watch it. Pete would not like it at all. Like, I can just tell he would hate it. Like, it would be he would either just find it boring or it would get into his head too much and he just couldn't handle it. You either get those like 2 reactions with it, and Pete doesn't like horror, and Midsommar is like one of the few films that actually makes me feel sick watching it. So like, I feel like I doubt with that Pete will watch it. Also, Pete knows I warned him about Hereditary as well and how creepy that was when it first came out. So yeah,
controversially, I actually do find Hereditary a lot more unsettling Midsommar.
I don't think that's
Midsommar,
controversial. It's really controversial with me.
Yeah, it's just because Hereditary's just like Midsommar, just the location and stuff removes me a lot from like seeing it, but like just the setting of Hereditary and the way they've
I think they're both creepy.
Yeah.
Hereditary is really creepy as well. Midsommar just like kind of gets under my skin in a lot of ways, and it really freaks me out. And also like thematically, what it's about is really like intriguing to me. I'm actually really keen. He's like new film. Like they dropped a trailer for it recently.
Oh, yep.
It's got Hawk and Phoenix in it. Yeah, Beau is Afraid. It looks really trippy. I'm really excited for it. Apparently it's like 3 hours long. Apparently it's like 3 hours long, so I'm gonna have to make sure I fucking like don't drink the whole day before I go see it and like piss fucking before. But I'm really keen for it. I think it'll be fun. Hawk and Phoenix is a great actor. And even looking at Hereditary and Midsommar, Ari Aster like brings out the best in his actors as it is already. Like Toni Collette is a good actress, Florence Pugh is a good actress, but fuck me, they give like great performances in those films. So it's like Hawk and Phoenix is a fantastic actor already. Like I'm really keen to see what he does with an actor like that. Not like dismissing Toni Collette or Florence Pugh in any way, because I really love both of those. They're great actresses.
What kind of ties them together then in terms of like, as you said, like what you look for in a great film and what those sort of films like make it,
because they're all tonally different.
Exactly.
Like every film I just
you got some action, you got some horror, like it's all completely sort of.
It's like I've actually been writing about this so fucking much with like a video that I've been making for YouTube and like about kind of the idea of like a story structure. But I think like what it comes down to is that all those films, they tell the story that is like in a way that is appropriate for them. So the structure of those stories and the tone of them, they're all different. Like the way like Scream, I consider Scream a masterpiece. It's for different reasons to why I think like Midsommar or 28 Days Later is a masterpiece. Like they're completely different types of films, even though they're kind of in the same horror genre. But like Scream's a bit more of a parody, kind of comedy. Like not parody too much because it is like embracing the tropes as well, but it's kind of like making fun of it and aware of what it is and all that, and it's kind of goofy and lighthearted. Then Midsommar is just like this really kind of like trippy, gets in your head like kind of horror. It's like playing it kind of seriously, and it's also kind of talking about like ideas of toxic masculinity and also kind of cults and like how they like indoctrinate you and everything. And then 28 Days Later is like a film about survival. But the way that those films are all put together are always appropriate for it. Like 28 Days Later looks worse than both those films, Scream and Midsommar. But that works for 28 Days Later because it's kind of intentional, because they're trying to make it feel like you're actually a survivor. Like it's kind of giving you that survivalist edge, like filming it with a hand camera, because that's how they did it. It had the advantage of it's easier to film some of the big shots like in London that they needed, where all the town's like completely empty and they needed to block off roads. But it has the advantage of it adds to just kind of scruffy, like this kind of really like raw feeling of the film. And it's a film where I don't want to watch it in good quality because it kind of takes away from it. The kind of roughness of it and all that, it kind of matches the actors and the characters that they're playing. Whereas Midsommar is this like really beautiful, well lit up horror film where it's like just super bright out and all that, but it's kind of the point because it's trying to make because it's trying to make you feel safe when like in reality you're not safe. Like the characters aren't safe where they are at all, and it's kind of like it's kind of easing you into this false sense of security. And then the way they play with sound and like cinematography, especially in like that notorious scene that everyone talks about with it, the one towards the end. I meant at the end, like the one that you kind of feel a bit like mixed with. I won't spoil anything, obviously, but it's like, I think like video games, it's a bit easier to determine what it is that I like in video games. And I think to a sense, it's similar. Like I said that soundtrack, gameplay, and story is kind of what I like in video games. And if you have all three of those like nailed, it will eventually, it has a better hope of being a good game for me. But and with films, like soundtrack's important. But then there are films that don't have a soundtrack at all, like No Country for Old Men, which I watched recently.
Incredible film, bro.
Incredible, and it has no music, and it works because
it adds so much to it. Like the tension in scenes is built so much more because of the complete silence of it.
Like that kind of factors into the soundtrack element anyway, because it's like not having a soundtrack is still a part of the design, like the design with the soundtrack.
Exactly.
So soundtrack, obviously, script, like I think is important, and like that kind of in cases like character dialogue and all that as well. Like you need to kind of have it. But there are other elements with that as well. You need like the cast to be good as well. Like 28 Days Later wouldn't be my favorite film without Cillian Murphy in it. I think he just nails Jim's character, and so did a lot of the other characters cast in it.
None of them, and it's all quite subdued performances in a really good way. Nobody's
the only performance I don't like in that film is like the kid, but that's like she's like it's easy to dismiss her. She doesn't talk for a lot of the film. When she does talk, she's just like it's like small scenes, or she's really drugged up, so it's easy to just kind of ignore her bad acting. Yeah. And then you need cinematography to be good as well. There's a lot that goes into a film. It's really hard to kind of nail what it is that I like more in a film. But I think you just need to have that core message understood, and you need that structure that pulls everything together to be
like
good.
A cohesive vision that everyone's working towards. You know,
if you know what, it feels like a cheap answer, but there's so much more at play in films. It feels like there's a lot at play in video games as well, but it's easier for me to narrow down what I like in video games when I'm playing them. Whereas in movies, I have such a range of movies I like. Like I said, I listed a few horror films, but I listed Tarantino's films as well. There's like a few other there's a bunch of films I could from each genre. I could probably have different things I look for in each film. Like really,
yeah, definitely.
Like Jackie Brown and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are two very different films that I said are my favorite for Tarantino. But they still have that kind of vision and core identity and idea.
Yeah,
I talk
and
for
I
a
think
lot.
that's also the sad reality with a lot of these films is just because once you start to get to a certain budget, and this is like a main problem with Marvel films, is that there's too much money involved for there to be sort of a cohesive vision. You know, like a director can't kind of take a script that he likes and then sort of build it up to be this entire sort of complete vision. It's like, no, you have to put this in, and test audiences say they don't like that, so this needs to be in it instead, and this has to change because that isn't popular at the moment, and we need to put this hit song in because this hit song is going well right now, and you know, all of this sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden it becomes this kind of like this mass that's not even bad, and in a weird way, bad would almost be better because then you can get some
there'd be something to like actually like talk about rather than like this kind of like factory made product.
Yeah, this generic, all edges rounded kind of thing that doesn't have anything sharp or meaningful to say, and it doesn't have any mark of sort of unique talent. And I think that's sort of the problem with films today. Is it's not even that our films are that bad; they're just painfully average.
And I think it comes down. I was just going to say, mediocrity is a terrible fate. That's all. That's all I have to say. And a lot of it is just mediocre. And mediocre is defined by being middle of the road, sanitized, doesn't challenge anything, doesn't push any boundaries. Exactly. It's perfect. You know, it's just this one thing. And that's, you know, a massive part of what I think makes, in some cases at least, indie films really interesting is because, as Ben was saying, without, you know, being rounded down, edges rounded off is such a good way to look at it, Ben. I think that like when you talk about film generally or just projects, even this is the same in video games, like Shaun and I have gone on forever about like AAA studio video games that have all of the stuff, massive open world, crafting elements,
and it's just like a box ticking kind of thing. It's not that it makes sense within the game space. It's that
exactly that. Yeah, but it's yeah.
Sorry, go on. No, you go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, that's, like, for video games, it's so obviously just this tread the line, everyone likes this stuff, so it's all going in, versus a very sharp, visceral focus on something. So all of the movies you've just listed, Shaun, like, some of them are bigger than others. Obviously, 28 Days Later was much more of a budget, stripped-back survival horror. Scream was really fun, and I think that was the whole point. It's like, we're going to take what's fun about horror movies and turn it into a film.
Yeah. So I think that's probably your that's sort of your tying thing, is that all of them kind of like have this very cohesive direction they want to go, and
I just like good movies. That's my opinion.
It's almost the thing is like I
was going to say it's like what we said with Rocky as well, where that's a film where it's a passion project. They knew what they wanted to do, so they kind of like, and they like all the people involved put their all into like achieving the vision that like Stallone seemed to have had with like the film and like the passion project that it was, rather than like a Hollywood film like what's a good one that came out last year, just sort of Marvel film. I can't think of any, but like you know, like yeah, you see like stuff like Thor: Love and Thunder, like even Doctor Strange to an extent, even if it was the one I probably liked the most, where it's like it's very factory made. Oh, Doctor Strange is a bit of a weirdo because Sam Raimi's a fucking weirdo, but but yeah, it's like it feels factory made and like it's just there's not a lot of heart in it. I didn't like Ragnarok as much, but Ragnarok has more heart in it than Thor: Love and Thunder does. And yeah, and like it just doesn't feel like it's got a lot of care put into it. Like a film like it's recent, that Puss in Boots film that everyone loves, which has like really good animation, and I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it though. But you see all this like love, like you like from what I've seen of it, like the animation has so much like love and care put into it. Spider-Verse is another film I'd say is one of my favorite films actually as well, and that's like one that's just like fucking dripping with like love and like care and like style put into it. I really love Spider-Verse a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think like it's just like if you don't have this kind of image that you're aiming for, like what's the point really? Like if you're just doing it just because you're like it will make money, I feel like I can't think of a film where I'd say that it worked for them or something. Like it's like even Avatar to an extent, James Cameron does care about it. Like he does, like he's super invested into this world. I don't know why, but he's like he's like he's so invested in this film that he's like got 5 films lined up for it, and he's like willing to like devote his life to it.
He has. He's turned it into his entire program. Like I reckon the guy will die making Avatar films. Like
absolutely. At this point, I just as someone who like writes always like as a creative person, I just can't imagine wanting to put my all into something that just doesn't have any kind of heart, like or that I care about it. Like just writing something for the sake of money, like in terms of like your own kind of passion project or creative like thing or something. So I feel like it just adds to like the momentum for it as well. And you see it a lot, like when in behind the scenes stuff for films where people truly cared about it, like how much more happy are they looking at. So I guess that's debatable because like a film like The Shining is a masterpiece, but fucking hell, it looked like being on that set was like hell for some of the characters like involved. Exactly. So it's like it's a bit debatable, but even then, like in his own twisted way, Kubrick had a vision that he was aiming for. I don't think the way he treated Shelley Duvall, that's her actress name, right? It's not that wasn't the character or actress, I don't think the way he treated her was good by
he basically abused her,
tortured her, like really, like it was just straight up torture. She went through so much, and it was a good performance, but I feel really bad for her whenever I see behind the scenes stuff. I'm like, fucking Christ. But like that's a good wrench in the system. Like that's like a film where it's like a bit chaotic, and they still made like a film that's considered a masterpiece. But I guess back then you could just do whatever, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, what about you, Pete? Then, in terms of like films, like what is your kind of like, even if it's not so much overall, it's like right now, what are you really enjoying in films? I guess, and what are some aspects that you're looking for in films currently that you feel like? Yeah,
man, you know what's really funny is that when I was talking to my dad recently, and we were at a cocktail bar or something, and I was sipping whiskey, and I was having a conversation with him, and we were talking about Stallone. Actually, it was really fun. We were talking about Rocky and Rambo and shit like this, and I was sort of saying like, you know, Rambo 1 is awesome fucking movie, and this is sort of what I was talking about with Shaun as well. But I think I'm less. One of the things I want to do now, just generally, is that I am yet to see a movie that's come out in the last 2 years that I've been excited to go and watch. Like I'm genuinely serious about that. There's not like a single one. There are exceptions. There's like I have directors that I'll just fucking pay every single day of the week. I'm super keen for Oppenheimer, Nolan's new film about Cillian Murphy and the development of the nuclear bomb. I'm really fascinated to see what that's about. And Guy Ritchie's new film that I don't think has still come out yet, the one about like just Statham and a bunch of actors pretending to be, or they're hanging out with the crime boss to try and get their method acting going off, but at the same time they're actually become secret agents, and it just looks like this crazy romp around Italy and Sicily and a whole bunch of dumb shit.
Oh, nice.
That looks like a huge amount of fun because I just love Ritchie's dialogue and I love the way he writes movies, and I think those are fantastic. But like in terms of stuff coming out Netflix, stuff coming out Disney, stuff like it, and the other thing too is I guess one of the things that is massive is that people, I'm not saying they're moving away from cinema because cinema's still got a very, very important place in things. And I reckon Tarantino's assessment that cinema's never going to die truly is accurate. I don't think it will. Yeah. But there's no movies that I look at that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm super keen for this to come out. And actually the same can be said of games. I haven't heard about any games coming out, seen any games coming out that I've been like, oh fuck yeah, this is going to be the shit.
But do you reckon that's more to do with you, or do you reckon that's more to do with the media landscape and just?
I think it's partially both. I think part of me is like, and this is a conversation that I have often now. Whenever I'm sitting down with people to watch something, like I've been accused of being incredibly fucking picky because they're like, "Oh, I want to watch this thing," and I'm like, "I don't want to watch that. It looks like trash." I want to watch this series. I don't want to watch that. It looks like trash. And then we had this whole fucking conversation about it because it was like, well,
when we have like a movie night, we're just like, "Oh, this looks like shit. Let's put it on," and then we just
we watch the like shittiest looking movie and chuck it on.
Yeah, and we like, and then we finish it like, "Wow, that was fucking awful. Let's never watch that again."
I'm so glad we watched that.
Yeah, killer under the bed. Whoosh.
Yeah. I don't know. Like for me, I think it's a crossroads thing because if you go out to watch an intentionally bad film, then fuck yeah,
Absolutely.
like I'm into it. Yeah. It's a headspace thing, and for me, because I try to limit the amount of time I spend watching shit, at least like media-wise. Like this says nothing of my YouTube addiction, but generally, like when it comes to films or series, I want to watch something that's going to grab me and keep me rolling through the whole thing, and I'll be able to like look at it and really enjoy it and everything else. So, for instance, I started watching a series recently called Diary of a Gigolo on Netflix because I'm apparently degenerate. John Bernthal did the American remake. This is the OG Spanish one. It is conceptually fucking hilarious. The movie, the series itself is really degenerate, but I don't know. Something about it. So like the first couple of episodes, I was actually really hooked on the concept. I found it really fascinating. It's very torrid. Like it's very sort of it's a story about a incredibly attractive fucking Spanish man, and he just goes around and sleeps with bored housewives and gets paid for it. Like, that's his whole thing. He's a male prostitute basically. And so you watch that and you're like, oh, this is whatever. This is obviously just for women, for bored housewives. They watch this and they can live out this fantasy and stuff. But essentially, the premise of the entire story is that there's this uber rich Spanish like chick, and she's like basically a noblewoman, not an actual noblewoman, but like she's the surviving widow that heads up a massive pharmaceutical company, and she has this regularly uses this particular male prostitute who's like the main character of the whole story. And then her daughter's gone through like massive trauma because she got burned and like messed up pretty badly in a car crash, and so her mother hires this male prostitute to get with her daughter and try and get her to open up and become a real woman. And that's the entire premise of the show. And so immediately you're like, that's fucked up, dog. But also like conceptually, story-wise, I was like, okay, this is daring. Like this could go in some interesting directions. And you're like, okay, leaving aside how horrendously fucked that is for a second. I was fascinated. So I watched the first couple of episodes and I was like, okay, so characters, we're getting good story on characters, like build-up's good. I mean, some of these tropes associated with them are a little bit whatever. But then you hit your romantic plot tumors and everything else in the middle, and then you have characters getting together and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, you just don't have the right kind of montages, or you don't have the right kind of character beats to really sell it and really make it believable. And so you start to lose touch with it. In terms of what I like about, like, I guess... a singular uniting principle of things. Well, to finish my earlier point, I want to go back to the 80s, dude. I really want to go back to the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I want to watch a bunch of testosterone-filled meathead movies. I need to go and watch the entire Rambo trilogy, the entire Rambo series. I need to watch all of Rocky. I need to watch, like, Schwarzenegger. I need to get into the Expendables mindset right now. That's what I'm feeling. Because I genuinely think the Expendables was a mad fucking film for all the wrong reasons. In that, like, they set out, and I think this is what I like, and this does echo what Shaun was saying. When you have a concept, like, and here's the thing, I think partially it's a conceptual thing too. If the premise of your show or your movie is interesting, or it just grabs me and it's like I haven't seen this done before, and it doesn't even have to be, I haven't seen this done before. I haven't seen it done before like this. So that immediately grabs me, and if they can actually like make that happen and suspend my disbelief and not take me out of the entire thing, and that would obviously constitute a good film or a good series. But I think a lot of it's like, okay, I'll take an example. For instance, Fast and Furious is, in my opinion, one of the possibly the most genius, and this is going to sound so stupid, but it is one of the most genius like film series in history. And the reason for that is because it started out as street racing and tuning and all the rest of this stuff, and then about after the fifth movie, movie number 5, they just jumped the shark, right? They went, okay, we understand as the writers, as the character actors in this, we understand how absolutely ludicrous this premise is getting, and we don't give a fuck. We're just going to lean into it now.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess you can respect it in that regard, that they just...
I think it's less respect, dude, and it's more, this harkens back to something I was talking to Shaun about last pod, which was when you were making horror films like Friday the 13th or like this stuff, if you're gonna make it to like 8 movies out of a series, right, then and you fully understand how ridiculous the premise is, like we should have made one sequel and then forgot about it when it started to do poorly. Not, hey boys, we're at number 4. What the fuck are we doing with this? And then they have to come up with some really creative solutions to try and garner interest. Like, I love that shit from a writing perspective, because it's kind of like at some point you're going to jump the shark if you keep doing this. And I have a lot of respect. I'm not maybe the greatest. I think what makes a Fast and Furious so good, and not in terms of anything other than the fact that that franchise still exists and they're still making movies of it, is because they've kind of got that old school mentality about it. Like, the old school mentality is, we're just going to keep pumping this shit out. And if people keep watching it just to see what, like, they have to keep upping this spectacle.
Isn't that the problem that we're sort of talking about, though, is that they are just pumping this shit out and making more of the fucking same, and everyone's a bit done?
I'll just say, if Fast and the Furious comes out with, like, zombie cars or, like, aliens, like, from space and they're fucking racing against aliens, I'll be the first in line to see it. I'll be like, fuck yeah, fully jump the shark. Go, like, off the rails entirely.
Bro, don't just
alien races? I'll fucking, if an alien comes down and is like, Don Beretta or whatever his name, I challenge you to a race for the galaxies. Earth safety's in your hands. And then, like, it's a full, like, drift, like race in, like, the space and all that. Like, fuck, sure, do that. Like, I'll take back every bad thing I've said about Fast and the Furious. I think the thing with, like, Fast and the Furious, though, is that it's, like, it's jumped the shark, but it's kind of, like, it feels like it's jumped the shark in similar ways for, like, a bunch of movies. So it's not, like, in the way that the old, like, Friday the 13th, where they were, like, oh, it's Jason. Hello. Oh, now he's a cyborg in space, killing space, like, astronaut people, like people that are making a space colony. Now he's got like a hell parasite. Like, he's a demon from hell or something. It's kind of like, it's interesting to look. I don't think any of those movies are good, but like, or like really good or anything. But like, it's interesting to look at and be like, you guys are fucking weird. Like, you had some weird ideas. Whereas Fast and the Furious, it's kind of just like, over the top stunts and all that, like, oh, we attached our car to a rocket or something. I think I saw that happen once. So it's kind of funny and cute how long they've kept it going, but it's not, like, to me, it's not as cute as, like, the old slasher films. But even then, like I said, I think that those old slasher films, like, realistically, I think, like, the milking of it is fucking ridiculous, and I'd rather, like, but it's like a kind of, like, awareness of it is, like, the way I'd put it.
And that to me, I think what I love the most about a good fucking film, really, or a good series, is creativity. and in that is a very, very broad, sweeping statement to make. But like, when you're coming up with stuff that's completely off, I think this is one of the reasons why anime is so massive now as well, and that even people who aren't into it at all are starting to look into it as something to do, is because the Japanese are endlessly creative. They really are. They come up with some crazy shit. They are on some stuff over there on those islands, and it's awesome. And I think that like that ability just to be able to come up with something, or at least take an old idea and then twist it in such a way and visually make it visually creative, I think. So when I think of like John Wick, you don't think, oh yeah, this is like a really gripping new story and it's super whatever. It's like, no, it's an old it's a revenge plot. It's tales old as time. But it's visually incredibly creative. It's stunts, it's incredibly creative. Story-wise, even like with the setting is incredibly creative. Characters, not so much. Yeah, the continental and exactly. Like assassin taxi drivers and assassin fucking librarians and shit. Like there's creativity in that. And I think that's one of the things that I respect and I love the most about stuff. And in some cases, it's not the case. I think like some of my favorite series of all time have just been Marvel's Netflix series. Like, and I say that for The Punisher and Daredevil.
Yeah, that was back when they were making actually good series, though.
Yeah, dude, and this is my point. So I think that what really kills me about like newer stuff, and this is one of the reasons why I don't get excited about things anymore, is that they don't seem to be creative enough. Creative enough. It's so fucking lame to say that, but it's like when I look at this stuff, I don't look at it and go, "Oh yeah, this is pushing something." It's not new. Do you know what I mean? And of course, everyone wants something new. Everyone wants something fresh. But it's like, even if you just have a run-of-the-mill rom-com or rompy little action film or whatever the hell it is, like, it doesn't feel like mediocrity is a terrible fate. I said that again, and I think it's true in that, like, if you just get, I think what they need to start doing, to be honest, is just start throwing this whole this sells well thing into the trash. And I know they can't do that because it's a business, and yeah, but like let's just get some like, no, not crackheads, but let's just get some really creative people.
Yeah, like this person's bringing like a rom-com script. But what is new about this rom-com? What will make
Let
it
me and Pete make our Jurassic Park Kaiju Island movie.
What is this?
Last episode, Pete like threw about the idea of Jurassic Park getting nuked, and then like there's just kaijus like that come off the island and start attacking Earth. Let us make it. We'll make it. Awesome. Netflix. Let these two 20-year-olds fucking We'll cast Stallone as the main character.
Oh fuck yeah!
All the money will go to him.
Oh hell yeah! I'll watch the fuck out of that, dude. I'm like, but this is the thing. I think, okay, so bag it all you like. Rick and Morty is creative as fuck. I think this is one of the reasons. Like everyone talks about it being, really geniusly written and this and that, and it deals with really always heavy themes and stuff. But visually and in terms of like the actual story, the reason that it doesn't come out all the way it's been fucking spanned out is that like each episode's premise is inherently creative as hell. It's inherently interesting. It's inherently stupid. And some of them you can go, oh, well, this was a dud, and this one wasn't interesting. But like, the creativity involved in a lot of like even just animation generally. I think this is one of the reasons is like in the Spider-Verse is also one of my favorite movies, is because it takes let's take a Spider-Man film, but let's just get a completely different medium and let's just jack it the hell up. Let's just do some completely off the wall stuff. You know what I mean? I want more. Wall. I want more stuff, and so what I want to. This is one of the reasons why I want to go back. I want to go back and watch Demolition Man again, because for me that's so much fun.
That's such a fun film. Exactly. Have you seen it, Shaun?
It is.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
It's a film. It's goofy. It's fun.
I find it so entertaining.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
It's stuff like that. That's more what really gets me going. And so when there's like a game that comes out, like it's just something about it's different, and it's not like, oh, the premise is different or the world is different, but like the gameplay mechanics are a bit outlandish. Like it's a little bit more interesting. I've been playing a lot of Darkest Dungeon lately. I don't know about you guys if you've ever played that, but Darkest Dungeon's been one of my games, and it's a turn-based dungeon crawler, but the entire game is set up to be a complete turn-based dungeon crawler, 2D, like whatever, one of the most basic things. It's like sort of almost like 4-player Pokemon or whatever. You just go into dungeons, beat up stuff. But what makes it super, super, super interesting is the fact that they included like a stress meter with all of your characters. And so the whole idea is that your characters will die and everyone's disposable. And so there's this kind of thing where like every time you go into a dungeon, there's enemies that attack your stress meter, like they attack your stress, and they get more stressed when they like get hit with a critical attack, and the RNG just hates you. Like the RNG is actually totally random as opposed to favoring certain things. The RNG is completely random, and the AI is out of its way to fuck you. So the entire game is actually you trying to manage your hero's stress levels so they don't go completely batshit insane and start trying to kill each other, or randomly attack and completely ruin your entire gameplay and your strategy. And so the whole thing is like, it's a bog standard 2D like turn-based dungeon crawler, which you could play on your phone and it would be whatever. But with the inclusion of a stress meter, suddenly it's just added this completely new dimension that makes it insanely creative, insanely interactive. And it gives you this thing of, I'm never going to see this again. Like it's just got something about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love something like Rambo, or I love something like Rocky, or I want to go back and watch these films again. Even the A-Team, which is just like the movie itself is nothing special.
Because they just have that sort of unique edge, and they're not just trying to make a carbon copy of something that's pre-existing kind of thing.
Exactly right.
Be safe and cash in kind of thing.
And that's one of the reasons why not intentionally bad movies, but movies that are bad, they know it's bad and they're leading to it, like Sharknado, which is intentionally bad, granted, but like movies like that are so much fun because it is trying to just take the piss. And to me, when you lean into it enough, if you just lean into that like unique or that creative edge, that to me really sells something, I think, in a lot of ways. And then, if we actually had an audience, I'm sure I'd get a flood of messages going, watch this, super creative, watch this is super creative. And like there is a degree where if you've only got pure creativity and you're watching, French indie art house films, it's completely incomprehensible. Like you need structure and you need narrative and you need parameters, don't get me wrong. But if you can operate within those story parameters well and have a real something to it that I haven't really experienced before, then I am much more in favor of that. And I feel that with the content machine being as it is, it's very hard to get that these days.
Yeah.
You seriously need to watch Malignant. You would love it a lot.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you really need
That's
to watch
actually
Malignant.
something that you need to watch. Malignant is right up Pete's alley. It's
Yeah,
kind of
I
like
think you'd
that kind
really
of thing. It's
like it.
basically
It's got that horror thing at the start, but I don't think it's like that scary that you'd be that annoyed by it. And I think you'd really like. Yeah, I think
yeah.
you. I think you'd. I genuinely think you'd like everything you just said there. I feel like Malignant does actually fall into a lot of that stuff.
So basically, it's a similar sort of thing.
Don't
It
spoil
takes
it too much,
no,
yeah. But yeah,
I know, but I'm just sort of going like it takes sort of like it's like from the surface, it's a generic horror film, but it takes certain aspects that make it unique and it runs with it, and it's not afraid to kind of like just do what it does without sort of like trying to be something.
It is incredibly hard to talk about without like spoiling it.
Yeah,
But like,
and it's so much fun to see the.
It's a fun film, It's not taking itself seriously, so I feel like it's easier to just watch that and be like, oh, this is like, it's like a goofy,
Absolutely.
like kind of.
I would
fun.
love to actually even have an episode talking about that, just sort of like.
I have a lot that I could say on it. I have a lot that I could say on it.
Can I sort of go on then about sort of my thing?
Yeah, if you want, I was just gonna say, I just want to say briefly, like just real quick. I think like in terms of films where not in terms of like films coming out and all that, I agree with you to an extent that like when it comes to films, I think there's less films I'm excited for now than there are games. There's way like for me personally, I think there's a lot of games coming out, but I think we're kind of going for a hack and slash renaissance or whatever right now. Yeah. So like for me, I'm in like fucking glory days, having fun like every year basically. But I think for films, I think part of it might be that we're still kind of recovering from the COVID stuff and like how a lot of filmmakers had to stop to an extent. Like it would have surprised me if there is a bit of the lull in recent years was partly because of that. There's good films here and there, but I absolutely agree. There's like not a lot of films I'm looking forward to. It's mainly just like Ari Aster's next film, and I was going to say that's something that we could like say like other directors that we look for when it comes to films that we like because there definitely are for me. But you go, Ben. You can have your spiel now.
No, yeah, I'll be quick. It's just sort of similar to like, well, basically the first thing that at least lately, I would say, I'll qualify this more like, my film tastes are constantly changing sort of over time, but currently, the big thing that I look for, which is similar to Shaun, is that like those rough edges, sort of a vision of a particular person or a particular group of people and seeing that vision realized through a film, even if it's not necessarily the best thing, I actually value that so much more than this kind of, generic box ticking test audience kind of thing. Like something that kind of like what stood out for me most recently. Oh, well, like for example, I recently watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Shaun, as well as also the American Werewolf in London. Both these kind of horror films from the 70s, and they're just so unadulteratingly cohesive in the sort of film, like the kind of film that they set out to make. Like basically, American Werewolf in London. I forgot his name. The guy that directed Blues Brothers. Name.
Same dude.
Yeah. He made it. He wrote the script when he was like 18 years old, and he tried to get it made for like 6 years, and he finally got the budget to make it. And it's just it's so unadulterated. It's like this perfect mix of horror and comedy, and I
genuinely think it's like the funniest film I've ever seen. It's easily the funniest ending to a film I've ever seen as well. Exactly. Fucking hell.
But that kind of thing it's like and it's not. And I think this is something that people kind of miss. Like I know there's a place for sort of high art films. There's places for your sort of your Lawrence of Arabia and Schindler's List and stuff like that. Those are the sort of perennial films that are incredible, and because it's such a powerful medium that plays on so many different senses, it can have that incredible effect. But when it comes to sort of making film as a business and making film as entertainment, I think that having like a cohesive vision like Malignant, where there's just a director has an idea and they go, fuck it, let's run with it, like Pete's saying, and then you just come up with something that has it's not perfect, but it has something that really draws you in. And that is the stuff that's trend sets that then other studios are trying to replicate by copying it. And then they're like, oh, like, smart animated like interstellar comedy is up and is the popular thing right now. Yeah, because Rick and Morty was unique and created that. Yeah, these are the kind of things that, and the second thing that is really sort of like I've noticed so much more. This isn't more, well, it's generally an overall thing, but it's something that I've specifically noticed lately that really makes me love the films that I love, and that is that so many writers you can tell that they just don't like people, if that makes sense. They don't like people, and therefore they don't like their characters, and therefore nobody likes their characters, kind of thing. Like, so many, like, I mean, the epitome of this is Velma, the new show that just came out, is that, like, you could just tell that the woman who wrote it is the most bitter, resentful, hateful, like,
That
angry
show is
person
like
you've ever
such a
met.
weird one.
Yeah, she's basically like, the entire thing is just basically, I'm not hot. Fuck you bitches for being hot. I'm like cool because I do my own thing and I'm crazy. And it's like it's just like, it just reads as a like petulant child. It's just,
It's that show is like weird to me because it feels like it doesn't even want you to watch it, or it doesn't
mm.
want an audience to watch it. Like it
Well,
makes
that's what
fun
I
of its
mean. It
audience for
resents
watching it.
literally
Yeah,
everything from its audience to its like characters. Just it just hates everything about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. And it's not like it's not like there's like not a market for like unlikable characters or
Mm.
anything, like or despisable characters. Like one of my favorite films is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, as well.
Yeah.
And like every character in that film is a horrible person in their own
Yeah.
way. Like they're all really flawed. It's just like, but like the like. Funnily enough, with you saying like that, like it feels like the writers like write Velma for like out of just hate. Like that film on itself is centered around hate, and that's kind of why it works because it talks about the concept of like mindless hatred and like
Yeah.
and like not being able to connect with others based
But
on
in
like
a strange
prejudices and all
way, it
that. But
still
yeah,
really cares about its characters because there
well,
are
yeah,
some
because
beautiful moments
those
that are
those
so
characters are
small.
some of the most like beautiful characters in like recent times. Like
Yeah.
that ending scene is like really like it's a really tragic and like kind of dark ending. Like when you consider what's happening, but it's a really beautiful moment between those two characters who are kind of at each
Yeah.
other's throats the whole way through.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really
Exactly.
yeah, that's a great film. That's definitely one of my favorites as
And
well.
that's sort of, yeah, something that just, it seems like it's missing so much from, like, for example, something that constantly comes out is this, the failed video game adaptation that's sort of like, or like another, or like classic books or something that are being adapted. We can go on forever about the Rings of Power and stuff like that,
Adaptions.
but it's the writers don't care enough about, say, the source material or the characters, but I would say mainly the characters within the source material, that they're not creating something that, like, it just comes across so obviously to me that, like, say something like Rings of Power, the writers don't care about any of the characters within that lore. In fact, they may even
Mhm.
resent them because they want to write their own thing, and then they've been put this contract and they're like, you need to write this and you have to be showrunners for this, and they're like, oh, fuck it. Like, and that is, I think, the sort of, for me at least right now, is the sort of make or break. That's why I'm going back to so many old films right now. Like, for example, American Werewolf in London. You can just tell that it's dripping for a love for the characters, even though they're tacky and corny. They're so likable because you can tell that the writer really likes them, and that
Yeah.
to me is what sort of sets those things apart. Even things like Maverick, like, people were saying, like, you could have taken it in the sort of a more woke, sorry, not Maverick, Top Gun, in a more woke direction, and been like, oh, he used to be the top thing, but he's just a misogynist, and he's just a piece of shit, and now we're like going to show him how he's wrong and how all of his sort of like toxic masculinity is now going to be shot down. But instead it's like, no, we fucking care about this character from another time period, and we're going to continue making him this kind of uplifting boss character. And no, you can't help but like that, and you can't help but
Yeah.
become very attached to that kind of film. Same with 28 Days Later. All of these sort of films is that
Yeah. Well, I was
the
gonna say, like going off what you were saying, and I was thinking about it like earlier as well. I do think like characters are important, like character driven. Like I think a lot of the films I mentioned, the like main consistent thing amongst them is the characters.
yeah,
Like you were alluding to 28 Days Later. That film isn't like Jim is like the focus of the film, like his
yeah,
transformation, and he's like the like themes of the film. A film like Scream is like notorious for having some of the like most likable characters in like
yeah,
and like a franchise. Midsommar, like Dani, like the main character, is also the focus of that film, and all the themes are reflected through her. And like even all Tarantino's films, what I love about them are the characters and dialogue.
yeah.
It's
They're
like
so rich. Yeah,
yeah, it's like the
yeah,
characters are what drive it for me, and I think like the way you use that is like key as well because you can have characters that are just likable, or characters that are just hateable. Like Quentin
mm,
Tarantino has plenty of characters that are really detestable, but I still
yeah, yeah.
like the
Exactly.
characters a lot. But he also has some characters that are really like charming at the heart as well. Like Jackie
Mm,
Brown is like a good one.
yeah, or even what's his name? What's the antagonist in Inglorious Bastards? The German officer.
Yeah, yeah, like
Like,
he's
he's such
like
a terrible person, but he's so
yeah,
charming and really unnerving because of his
it's what
charm.
makes him so terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah,
because he's
yeah,
like so
exactly.
charismatic and everything. And even like even like the bastards themselves are so like unconventional, not what you would like. They're not like what you would normally root for, like kind of to an extent, because like they're the Americans, but they're also like so fucking like flawed in their own ways and like basically insane.
And it's kind of funny because he clashes like, oh, they're badasses, but they're also like a bit dumb and a little bit incompetent. You can kind of like laugh about that together, like, and that playing off itself is like
a
very
scene in the bar where it like zooms in on that character, like just fucking like being like he's like just thinking, and it's like you just hear the drum, and it's like him getting a cut scene like getting whipped in like the back, as a flashback. The whole bar scene is fucking phenomenal, right? But I think characters are like core to it, and I think it ties into there's like a bit of bitterness with current like characters and all that, where it's kind of cool to have edgy characters or like characters that are just assholes. And I think a lot of shows and movies forget that it's fine to have a character that's like an asshole, but you kind of need to know that they're an asshole. You can't be like rewarding their behavior or like making it look like it's cool. It's like BoJack Horseman, like his character is a terrible piece of shit, but it's fine throughout the show because the show never tries to justify him and like continuously punishes him. And it even makes fun of fans for idolizing him in like one episode. Like, that's why a show like that is good. But then you look at other kind of shows where the characters are just assholes and all that, and it's like not well received because people don't realize, like the creators don't realize that it's not the characters being like edgy that people like. It's the kind of way that those edgy characters are handled. It's the same with Free Billboards. Like I could see a movie like Free Billboards being done and being not likable at all because they don't like punish the characters at all, but every character in that like gets off worse than when they started, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They don't sort of go unpunished for their sins, but
or you could have a film like No Country for Old Men, where kind of the more detestable characters, like spoiler alert, I guess, because I don't the more detestable characters end up having like the kind of better endings in that film. And that's what makes it memorable because it's part of the theme. Like it's like kind of the unfairness of it and all that. Like, and how like it takes a toll on like the cop.
Brutal.
Yeah,
definitely.
The film is really heavy. It's a really, really good film. It ties into what I was saying earlier with like it depends on like what you're going for and how you handle it. There are different ways to do it, but I think characters are a core of it. And I think the reason why a lot of current films don't appeal much to us might be because of that bitter kind of edgy phase we're going through, where it's like,
which is kind of like still hang-ups from like the 2010s, you know? It's like you watch some of these shows and you're like, I feel like I'm watching fucking Family Guy. Like, you know, it's just everything is for the sake of a joke and everything is for the sake of cynicism. And even what Pete's getting at with sort of these films is the reason they're appealing is because whether or not the characters are lovable in themselves, they're sort of the films are made with this sort of love for entertainment and to bring out enjoyment for people. Kind of, they're not just built there to get a paycheck and also just because they fucking hate the world. I don't know. I just get this impression that so many like writers and people making films today just fucking hate everyone. And they're like, oh, I'm going to write in fucking the patriarchy and the fucking these terrible people. And it's just like, and we're watching this and we're like, what? There's nothing in here that's like, no one has any fun watching people just be shit all the time.
Do you know what? I was just listening to Ben talk and both of you guys talking about stuff. And I think actually it's something else that I've just pinpointed that I really need in all of my appreciated media. And all the media I love is catharsis. It is that driving force, and it seems to have been lost. So much of it seems to have been lost. So when I talk about catharsis, we can get all, old school with it and go, Aristotle and Murph. But like, honestly, to a point, there is this degree wherein you need to come away from something feeling good. And horror movies can make you feel good. They can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, horror movies are an excellent example of it. Brutal catharsis in their best possible way. Good tragedies, decent tragedies are incredibly cathartic. Good comedies are incredibly cathartic because they make you laugh. Like you fucking, you love it. You're watching terrible people get punished for their misdeeds, but they all get a happy ending towards the end of it somehow, or some variation. Or you watch terrible people get their just desserts. Like catharsis, in some degree, I guess, requires a certain morality. There's a certain point they're trying to get at. And while I love dumb fun catharsis, I love watching stuff blow up and people getting into really cool fight scenes and cars going to the moon and shit, like whatever you prefer. But that's kind of my point. Like there is catharsis in dumb action pieces and huge fun. And this is so cool. It's ridiculous. Like it's cool to the point of trying to be ridiculous, but there's fun in that. There's a genuine enjoyment you're getting. Like you're watching Hobbs and Shaw, and there's three tow trucks linked up to each other, and they're skidding off a cliff while getting shot at by an Apache gunship. And you're watching this going, oh yeah, this is fine. And you're laughing at how dumb it is, but it's still so much like, I would 100% do this if I had Hot Wheel cars and like a model of this set, right? Like that's the kind of thing you would cook up with when you're a kid. You'd be like, yeah, I'm going to link up this car to this car, and then I'm going to have that dragging this ute, and then we're going to try and skid off the edge of a cliff while it's getting shot at, and there's people jumping from car to car. Like, that is so patently ridiculous, but it's also so patently awesome that you kind of have to pay it, right? And that's sort of what I'm getting at. I think there has been a distinct, and this is talking what you're talking about, Ben, when they say they hate that, like, I hate people, and it's like being misandrous, like just hating humans is one thing, but you can hate humans and still have a really, really good story. I think there is no catharsis in a lot of these things, and bittersweet comedies or bittersweet tragedies and tragedies generally and all the rest. There's always some kind of emotional release.
That's the thing. I feel like really good tragedies don't hate their characters.
No.
They kind of like...
No, they don't. This is the human experience. And I think there's been a lack of that. Yeah, I think there's been an enormous lack of catharsis in so many films I've seen lately. Because, like, because there is a sense of moral judgment that the audience will have when they watch a movie. And, you know, we can bang on about, oh, you shouldn't judge and do this and that. But it's like, no, I'm watching a simulated reality of something, right? And in this side of the simulated reality, regardless of whether or not you like it, there are rules. There are rules you have to follow in a story. There has to be an arc, and this actually ties perfectly back into what Shaun was talking about. Characters are so important because characters have to have arcs. Character does something fucked, they need to be punished for it. If a character does something heroic, there needs to be a payoff for that. All right? And even if it's something like, you know, portraying a heroic sacrifice as being completely senseless is so cynical in some ways. And it might work for the world in some degree, but like there's still a poignant moment of heroism of someone going out of their way to try and help someone else that should be really like celebrated. And especially if the world's dark. Like, it shines even more if the world has gone to pieces and everything's gone to shit. A genuinely selfless or heroic action shines all the brighter inside of a world like that, which is what we see in 28 Days Later, which is one of the reasons why it's so great. A bunch of ragtag people who have no reason to trust each other. Everything's gone to hell. But pure survivalism isn't the pure focus on that. They're trying to help each other survive. And that means so much more. And that makes them so much more likable. Right?
I feel like there's only like 30% of that movie has zombies in it. Like realistically, when you look at it, it's not a zombie film, barely. It's like it's a zombie film, but it's way more focused on the humans. Unlike 20 weeks later, but whatever. But you keep going.
No, but that's my point. It's like catharsis is something I really, really need inside of my stories. And Rocky, perfect example, catharsis. Does he win the fight at the end of the movie? No. Does he sit there and take punches like an absolute champion and last the entire way through the fight? Yeah, he does.
Yeah. What's like beautiful about that ending is him like grabbing grabbing like Adrian like and then like meeting in the ring and like them saying they love you. It's not about like they like saying it's their moments like over like the win result, like who's getting announced. And that's kind of what makes that film so really touching in that way, because it's not about the match. It was about like this underdog guy that never got a chance, getting a chance and just wanting to go like the distance with them, doing the best he could. And that's what makes it really and that's what makes it beautiful. And like what you were saying as well about like characters and all that catharsis. I actually like just two things I want to bring up because they're Miami, but like it's like it made me think of I watched The Barbarian recently. I know you watched it, Ben.
Yep. Interesting.
And that film has it's decent. I like it a bit. I think the second act I found like a bit jarring, but like I like the build up of the first act.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think like I was just thinking because that film has a character in it who's like just apprehensible, like they're a scumbag, and like the film doesn't take them seriously at all. Like they're just like irredeemable, and it works because they have like their arc is just regressing more as a human, essentially. Like they don't have an arc of like growth, but that works because the film doesn't take them seriously. They're a joke. They're like kind of a comic relief character, but like they're taken seriously enough in that. It's weird because you spend a bit of the movie being like, oh, maybe they're not that bad, but then you get one scene, you're like, oh, they're that bad.
Just absolutely. But and then it just gets worse from there. Yeah,
it's just something I wanted to bring up with that. But then also like in this whole thing of catharsis, I think that's why like Everything Everywhere All at Once so much, because that film is like really, it's not like it's like characters are flawed, but it's got a really like kind of happy kind of message at the core of it. And it's like way more focused on like the good in people and like kind of like the potential will be good. And I think that's probably why, like thinking about it, why I like this so much in this kind of flood of like cynicism and like negativity towards characters. Where this film has like these flawed characters that do actually try to grow and like reflect on what they've done and how they can be better people. And it has like a beautiful message at the core of it as well. I can't recommend that movie enough. It's a really good film. You probably like it as well, Pete, because of all the action.
Yeah.
Sick.
I think, though, that the question I also have, and this is sort of like a counterpoint to that, because, for example, we'd all agree that Tarantino's films are very good. And one of his famous quotes is that he says, I don't want my characters to be weighed down by morality. Like, he wants his characters to purely exist, and he doesn't want, as a writer, to put any sort of moral judgment on them. And that's why his films, there's never really sort of a moral, like, solution or something that sort of happens. They all sort of just occur as a matter of happenstance, and they don't feel like they have to do a certain thing based upon, you know, the moral structure of things. You know, bad people get punished, good people get punished, you know. And what then about those films make them good and set them apart from the rest of media that is so often so shitty at the moment? And that's what I'm trying to figure that out. I don't have an answer, but I would be.
I feel like his characters are, to an extent, weighed by morality, though, or like at least like that concept of morality is present in it. So especially Jackie Brown, like that film feels like very like ingrained in like kind of morality and like what is like right and wrong. Like and even like he's like more despicable character. Like you said, like the good get like the good the bad get punished or whatnot and everything. Like his films do kind of replicate that. Like a lot of the kind of more slimy,
like Glorious Bastards. It's just like
I get what
satisfying.
I get what he means, that like he doesn't like really kind of want it to be like something that determines what characters get away. Like you see in the Hateful Eight, like all those characters are just fucking scumbags in their own way. Like
Exactly.
There's really no heroes that you're rooting for.
Yeah.
It's just at the end you're like, I guess I root for you two more. Like I guess I root for these guys more than the others. Like at this point,
purely out of their ability to survive and no other.
Exactly. And even then, like it's like ending and they're like almost borderline going to die. It's just like kind of like exactly. But that film works because he's like I said that his characters aren't like morality isn't like this thing, or like it's not like this. It's more real as well that like. It's not weighing it like the bad have to get punished. Like in that film as well, you see a lot of good people get killed and all that. And
I think it's also though you have to like that takes
it really
a lot.
It really is just down to how you handle it. Like you need to know what is the appropriate way to handle it. And I think Tarantino to an extent does know how he handles it. Like that's the thing. Like the bride is a great character, not because she's like a badass or because she like kills like lots of people and all that, and she's like a kind of like cool like female like figure. That is part of why she's cool. But what's cool about the bride, like in my opinion, is that like conflict at the end with when she does meet with Bill and like how she kind of does know that she is like just a killer. Like she doesn't try to just dismiss it. She knows what she is, but she's doing it because she is driven by emotion and like by revenge and wanting to get like that kind of satisfaction. That's what makes that film so great. Like as flawed as Kill Bill Part 2 is, that ending scene is like everything. Like that whole ending sequence of Bill and Bride is just fantastic. And it's why, in my opinion, the Bride is like one of his best characters. Again, like one of his best films has one of like his best written characters for me, where I love the characters and think that they carry, like they not carry a film, but they are what make the film so good. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I also think that when I talk about catharsis and morality within a story or within a world, and a brief thing to add to that might be that within the structures of the confines of the world's consequences. So maybe another way to think about it is consequences for actions inside of a world need to be addressed or at least covered, right? So with Tarantino, let's take Pulp Fiction for instance. Like none of the characters in that story really on any level are particularly good people. I think that's pretty obvious across the board. But each of them, like say for instance, Bruce Willis's character, he's got the ability to get the fuck out of town, take his woman with him, and sort of fuck off and do all the rest. But he actually goes back to that store or whatever, and then ends up in the bottom. And then he has an opportunity. He has an opportunity to leave his old boss behind and let him, get violated in the worst possible kind of way, right? But he actually makes it his business to instead try and save him and kill all those guys and then get out of there in one piece. And that's like, and that then allows him to make good his escape, and he gets level. Like he's cool with his boss, and then he doesn't get killed because of it. Like we're square, and he's out. Like there's catharsis in that. Likewise with Jules's character, right at the end, it's like there's the case, there's the stuff that's in it, whatever. But like at the end of it, he's trying, not to say he's trying to go straight, but he's becoming more of a a holy warrior or whatever the hell's going on with Jules. Like he wants to become a better
exactly.
person. And so right at the end of it, he doesn't get like just unceremoniously killed at the end of it for whatever reason. Like he actually, you know, survives that particular
Unlike,
ordeal.
what's his name? What's his partner's name?
Travolta's
John
character,
Travolta's
yeah.
character,
Yeah,
makes sense.
whereas he gets
blasted.
unceremoniously, yeah.
Yeah.
But he also went out and, you know, was doing all that stuff with his boss's wife, and he was doing an enormous amount of drugs. And like, and it's not to say that Tarantino necessarily weighs in, oh, drugs are bad because of this or that. It's like the actions that he took and the stuff that he got up to in the processes of that and the decisions he made wound up with him getting killed, right? And that's sort of like within the confines of the story, there are consequences for each of their actions, and as a consequence, because of their arcs so masterfully intertwined with the consistency of the world itself, there is catharsis in that. When you play by the rules, so here's the thing. If you're going to write, there are just overarching narrative rules you follow as a general rule. If you set up a system of morality within that world, and then those systems of morality are adhered to, you can still get catharsis out of it. It's where it starts to get dicey is if it is so deconstructionist to the point where there is, like, you know what I mean? There's no sense to any of it, right? I'll talk about Rick and Morty for some reason, but I have been watching a bit of it lately and reading up on it. And one of the things I find really fascinating about that is like Rick and Morty is literally the antithesis to everything because it's so deconstructionist in its concepts. Like, I don't even know how the fuck those guys still write that.
But at the same time, it's not exactly like Rick still is constantly suffering for being a shit person because he is like so it's like it's an interesting kind of thing because it's almost like the showrunner Dan Harmon. Also, I don't know if we'll be getting much more Rick and Morty with this whole lawsuit that's going on.
Yeah, but leaving that aside,
but anyway, you can tell that he set out to write this completely sort of amoral deconstructionist kind of thing, and then as the series has progressed, I don't know whether he's seen it as a writer or whether it was the initial intention all along from the first episode that like you just can't have these characters keep deconstructing everything. Like kind of, you know, they just end up becoming like no one wants to watch
they're terrible
them kind of
people.
thing. Like Rick, that's the thing. Like Rick is constantly doing this, but then over time he's like, "Fuck, I am a really shitty person, and I don't want to be this sort of way." And it's kind of a little bit like it's like a less cohesive BoJack Horseman kind of process where he's like a dog shit person and he's kind of trying to be better, but he keeps falling back into his old ways, kind of thing. And even though it attempted initially to be deconstructive, it seems like it kind of has found this heart, and it can't. And as a writer, Dan Harmon can't seem to deny that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Is that
have you been watching it lately?
Have I been watching it?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it since season 2. At all.
And season 1, 2, and 3 are kind of like the best, and then it's declined a bit. It's still decent, but Pete, sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say that like Rick's character, in as far as he exists with the concept at hand, is that he spends all of his life running away from the consequences of his actions.
Yeah.
And that comes back to bite him in the ass over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's like interesting because, you know, as much as people on a surface level might look at Rick and Morty and go, oh, you know, it's really cool that Rick is, you know, they adhere to, like, you know, it's a whole black pill thing. We're going to adhere to the nihilism and the insanity, and there's countless other realities where all this other stuff could be, and so none of it matters anyway, so fuck it. Yeah, nothing matters, so fuck it. We can do whatever the fuck we want type of thing. Or you go on the other end, which is what Rick and Morty actually started to lean into a little bit more, which is the anti-nihilist view. If nothing really does matter, then you have to, on some level... then what you make of it is what matters, right? And so there is there's that really, really good scene, and this is in, I think, the second season where, you know, Morty's talking to his sister Summer, and, you know, he's talking about how him and his grandfather's previous bodies from that reality are buried in the backyard. And he's like, nothing matters, everyone's going to die, and it's all going to shit. Do you want to come watch TV? And it's like, it's a really dumb line, but the poignant sort of version of that is, hey, like, it might be the case, but we can still be people, and what we do matters. Like, we make our own meaning out of that. And because Rick and Morty is so nihilistic and so the world is so deconstructionist and everything just goes to pieces and nothing matters, making your own sense of meaning out of that is so important, and that actually leaves a lot of the catharsis in it. You know?
Yeah,
and I think that's
exactly.
like, that's one point, and that's an extreme example. But when we're talking about shit that's just decidedly amoral and completely out of fucking whack, like, there's still a degree of core and there's still a degree of consequences in that, even if a lot of the humor comes from running away from those, and a lot of the story comes away from running away from those. It always comes back to bite you in the ass in the end. And I think that's what I really like about, that's what I find is really lacking in a lot of stuff. Like, you talk about Velma, as an example. And in some other cases, like I
Well,
could
even
name
Rings
so
of
many.
Power with Galadriel and the shit she does, and then just kind of like gets off scot-free because she's like the protagonist and she's a strong
Galadriel. Yeah,
female.
exactly right. Yeah, and like again, I'll point to Daredevil and Punisher. Like these are deeply flawed, deeply fucked up people with enormous amount of issues, but the darkness and everything else they have to roll with and wrestle with, they're still trying to be on some degree. They're still trying to be not good, maybe, but they're just trying to navigate this insanely fucking complex gray morality.
Yeah.
And you know, you feel for them as a character because there's a redeeming aspect to that. They still are, to some degree, human, and they still they want to be better, and they want to try and evolve past what they are. And I think that's so much of what makes a really, really good story in the whole. So, and again, so dumb fun catharsis all aside, I think that one of the issues with a lot more modern stuff is that, and again, this is not a blanket rule. I'm not trying to be a sort of doomer here, but I think that a lot of catharsis has really sort of dropped, or the arse of it's sort of just dropped out at the end of it. And now we're just like, well, let's make soulless remakes of old series, and we'll have all these new characters and all the struggles that the old characters come in. We're going to bring them all in for a paycheck so people put us in seats so we can watch the movie. And, you know, we see all these old actors coming back in a remake or this distant sequel, and it's amazing. But it's like the new characters don't have any of the complex moral. There's no morality about whatever they're doing. It's just, I'm good because I am main character, and anything I do is fine. And there is no complex weight to what I'm talking about because I get away scot-free with everything because the writer says I do. People getting their comeuppance for shit is super important inside of narrative. And while it's not realistic, it is really important, I think, to story structure. This all comes back to story. And you talk all day long about presentation and themes and stories and concepts and everything else. But for me, that kind of dumb fun catharsis is gone. In a lot of cases, we don't just watch, like, a lot of dumb fun movies. Like Boss Level's a good example of a dumb fun movie, I think. Yeah. And that's the one that came out recently. But like, there's not a lot of movies where you watch it for dumb fun, for the catharsis of it being dumb and fun and just explosions and crazy visuals and the stories.
Well, that would be nice. I would actually prefer more films like that. There's like a lot of films that should be dumb fun, but they try too hard to be something they're not, kind of thing. Like there's a lot to be said for a film that accepts that it doesn't take itself seriously and just runs with it, like you were talking about initially.
I think there's still like a bunch of current movies that are like good. I guess it might factor into what I look for is a bit different to Pete as well. But I do agree that I would like there to be more kind of just fun films, like films that I can just enjoy. And like there's a merit to like being able to turn your brain off and just enjoy a dumb film like *Malignant*, which is like a kind of like a stupid film, but it's like fun because those are stupid. And it'd be nice to have more stuff like that. Definitely. I think somehow we talked about what our favorite films were.
I think we got there, kind of like we
kind of branched to like storytelling as a whole as well. Yeah.
Sorry, that got unnecessarily deep. I think I took it a lot deeper than we were.
No, it's good, man. It's good. We like depth here. It's. I think it's a fascinating one because let's change gears here for a second when we talk about games, right? So we've talked about like the soul, because in most media, let's say visual media or written media or comic books, whatever it is, like there is, your story is kind of what carries everything. Presentation, absolutely, but you still need a story to present. Games offer a very weird little integration of gameplay, right? And when we talk about like a gameplay loop, and this is something that Shaun and I have discussed at length for ages, years even, at this point, but like we talk about the gameplay loop being satisfying and being genuinely enjoyable. And that's a really big aspect of what makes games good. It's like the story's we don't even need a good story with a good game. It can just be dumb fun, but it's the gameplay loop actually needs to be satisfying. And so I think a lot of that comes to like there is catharsis inside of a really good gameplay loop. Go here, kill boss. Go here, kill boss. Like that's Souls, that's Bloodborne, that's as basic as it is. Fight your way through a fucking level like Mario, and then go and beat the boss up, and then move on to the next one. And that's like most games sort of function off of that idea. And it is a very tried and true system, and it works really well because and then the idea of the game is that the better games, I think, like the really good ones, have a really interesting or intricate or complex, maybe not complex, maybe even simple, but like a different kind of game loop which interacts with the world and the game itself in such a way that you constantly want to keep feeding that beast,
Yeah. It's also rewarding. Like I think that a big problem with a lot of these games is that it doesn't feel like your time is rewarded in any sort of recompensable, you know what I mean? Like, good games, you feel like you put in this time to get this fucking sick suit of armor or something like that. And that seems to be something that's been like for example, like because of microtransactions and stuff, that's been walked back a ton. And so, like I think, like for example, this is just me talking about COD. Sorry, but it's a good example. Is that everyone in COD right now is fucking pissed because essentially what they run on now is a skill-based matchmaking or like attention-based optimizing kind of matchup. So basically, old COD used to be able to drop into a match, you'd just end up with, you'd have a couple of amazing players, you'd have some shit players. It was just a mixed bag, it was random. Like there was like sort of a protective bracket of the dog shit people, just so that they wouldn't be absolutely destroyed. But apart from that, everyone, it was a mixed playing field, and you'd balance out between teams. But the problem with current COD and what's pissing everyone off is that the company has changed their model so that you get only matched up with people that are very similar to you. And then basically they track your progress and give you hard games, like in order that, other players can destroy you. And then when it seems like you're about to leave, because they can track it based upon your previous progress, they'll give you an easy game. So it's basically constantly just kind of like feeding you whatever thing to keep you on there for as long as possible. And it's kind of, and people are like, I don't want to be fucking like guinea pigged here. I just want to like play a game and be shit and get better. And I can actually track my progress in a random sort of lobby because I can see that, randomly I used to get 6 kills and 20 deaths. Now I get 20 deaths and 6 kills. And that can't be possible when you're constantly being moved between skill brackets based upon attention, basically. And that's sort of, I think
this is
the problem
actually
with modern gaming is that it's all about
online play
it's not
as well.
about giving you sort of the satisfaction of getting better. It's about kind of like just giving you breadcrumbs and just enough to like sort of basically kind of, keep you. That's at least what I'm seeing. At least in like the sort of PvP kind of market, at least.
100%, dude. And there's the other part of like when, we all know who the final boss of Shaun's fighting game career is. We figured out who he is now.
Who's that?
And that's fine. The Red Power Ranger, bro.
You gotta watch some of the old episodes, Ben. It seems like
you gotta catch up on the weekly Whiff lore, bro. Shaun met the final boss of all fighting games ever.
Can we get a Wikipedia page for the weekly Whiff? Like just have like all the laws.
It's just a section that's like 6 pages long.
Shaun, arch enemies, like for Shaun, the Red Power Ranger. Page.
We need to get some art done up of him lingering in the background with a briefcase, bro. That needs to happen. No, seriously though, like, but with fighting games, in a PvP sense, I actually quite like the way that's structured.
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
about Shaun on this
though.
one.
That's sort of fighting games. It's a different kind of format, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's still like a similar kind of matchmaking, like ranked, like kind of like the kind of idea. It should be similar. Like it seems like COD's a bit more scuffed for it. From what I've seen from most games, like that I play for fighting games, the ranking's like decent. Like the thing is, I don't really play ranked too much for games. I kind of just go online, and sometimes I'll play against friends, or sometimes I'll go into like lobbies and just play against random people because. But Guilty Gear Strive, for example, the rank just never works whenever I try it. Exert, there's no one playing it, so it never works. DNF Duel has a ranked, but that's kind of mainly because it like got revived because of DLC characters getting announced, so there's more people playing it now. But yeah, it's like it depends on the player base and like how many people are playing it. But
Tekken's a weird one, like, and I think this is pretty much the go for most games. But like with Tekken, it is really funny because like when you're talking about Tekken, it's like you're always fighting a boss. With Tekken, it's not like you're fighting your way through cannon fodder. Like when you start off at Tekken, you're at bottom ranks, and then you quickly rank up if you're good, and then you get stalled on a rank where everyone's the same skill level as you. They're the same rank, and so you have to get better. You actually have to improve your game or your matchup skills to be able to get out of that rank and up to the higher rank. So a lot of people do care about rank because, like you were talking about with COD, Ben, like the higher rank you are, it's kind of it's a bragging right. It's like, hey, I've got this special suit of armor, I've got this special badge on my online profile because I pushed it that hard to get here, type of thing. And that's earned, and you feel earned when you get that, because when you have a grueling set of fights.
So it goes back to what we're talking about. Like, it's a difference between valuing the player and how much fun they have, and valuing the player's time. Like if all they're looking for is how much time spent in game kind of thing, then they use these dodgy underhand tactics where you're playing fucking shitty, boring fetch quests or whatever sort of shit. Yeah. This is more single player, but a game that values the player's sort of enjoyment will like, fuck it, let's put in this fun mechanic and let's kind of like, find a way to tweak it so you get the most fun and most bang for your buck, and these are the kind of things that I think it suffers from a
Games
similar
is a
sort of
weird
thing.
one.
But
Games is a weird one because while like with movies, like with different genres and that, there's different ways to approach like making a good movie that I'll enjoy that. With games, it's like for each genre, it's kind of entirely different. Like horror games obviously aren't built around replayability for the most part, and any that are would be really fascinating to kind of see. Like in Resident Evil, like in the speed runs are the closest it gets to replayability. But
and then also
terms of
like
that-
say like Until Dawn or something. But that's some
Yeah,
limited replayability.
yeah, but like in terms of those replayability things, they're kind of different, like in mindset to like what other things are. Like with action games or hack and slashes, like the replayability for me and what I would want from a good one of that is that I would want for the first playthrough to be a good kind of like you learn the game, you learn the basics of it, and then I'd want there to be enough of a skill ceiling in like future playthroughs that you can keep getting better with what you learn. The bosses and the enemy behaviors are tailored to each difficulty, and it feels like you're playing like a different kind of experience with each difficulty, whether it be new enemy spawns or new kind of enemy moves and like how the bosses act and react to you and all that. That's what I would want in a hack and slash game. It's why I like DMC3 so much because there's so much variety in playthroughs. It's why I like Metal Gear Rising a lot because it's like got a really fun skill ceiling and all that. And it's what I like most about hack and slash games. That's what I want them to kind of focus on more. Like
it's almost like the standard. It's almost like the standard mode is a tutorial for hard mode, and like you can keep exactly. And obviously Shaun is out here going, well, playing through on regular or playing through on easy mode is exactly. So I have to hit all the difficulties to get the platinum trophy. So the first one's just a tutorial, really. Normal mode is a speed run. Hard mode is actually playing the game, and extra hard is the real game. This is what I came here to do. I will not get that platinum trophy without playing it on all difficulties.
Yeah, I just want to say there be some games that don't even have trophies for difficulties, and I played on harder difficulties. I just do it because I want to.
Right, you masochist.
Yeah, I'm a masochist through and through. Yeah,
I used to. Yeah. I've currently I've changed my mindset. I always used to be, if I'm going to play a game, I'm going to play it on hard. But I've sort of changed my mindset now, and I'm like, especially like when you have when you're working full time and I still want to play through a game.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, it's like I've actually started going from normal to easy. I know that's like scummy, but I'm like, I just want to experience the game.
I mean, it's your experience. Like, no one should like fault anyone on like what difficulty you play on. It's just like, it's just each game like genre has its own thing. Like, obviously, like what I said there, I would want for like hack and slash games. But when like the Last, that doesn't mean I think the Last of Us Part 1 is like bad because
you play it on
it's like not got good like difficulty variety or something. What I like about The Last of Us is the story, or what I liked about it is the story and the characters and all that. Similar to a movie, ironically, which says a lot about the game. But like, in single, like it depends on the kind of game genre, and like they have different structures for it. Like obviously, the way an online game has to be good is very different to how a single player game has to be good.
Yeah.
Like there's different things you need to consider all up. And it's like an art to understanding like what you're going for and how you go for it. That's like kind of like the thing that we talk about all video, really. Like you need to know what it is you're aiming for, like when you're making something. Like
so
who are you? Yeah, who are you appealing to? Like who are you trying to bring in, like with this game or piece of media, and like how are you doing it? And there's a different approach for different types of things that you're going for, but ultimately every time it's like you need to have that vision, and you need to at least know what you're aiming for.
And just with the scale, like in the last sort of 20 years, just the amount of media that your average person consumes and the amount of it and how big these companies have gotten means that you sort of have this inevitable too many cooks in the kitchen kind of scenario with all forms, and then you end up getting these kind of bloated messes of games and films that don't have any sort of hallmarks of any sort of personal touch.
Something, I'm going to drag in my Magic addiction for a second, just because I actually think this is relevant. Fuck you. The point I was going to make was essentially like what Magic did, like way back when, before they, Hasbro started dropping out the arse, completely ruining the tabletop and the Magic community across the board.
Hasbro.
Yeah, dude. What they ended up, what they were doing, though, seriously, like their design for Magic is so fascinating to me. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but essentially they made stereotypes or like categories of different kinds of player for their own game. Yeah. I think this is really interesting because I think that a lot of games generally, this is the biggest table, like the most complex tabletop is probably Magic. Some people might fight me on that, but I think it really is. And one of the reasons for this is they have like 3 different kinds of players. I forgot the names, but one of them's like the Timmy, right? So it's the guy who sort of gets into Magic. I want to play really big creatures, cast really big spells, just have fun. I just want to do stuff that I think's cool in the game, that the game lets me do. I want to play big, stompy dinosaur and smack you in the face with it, right?
Yeah.
That's a Timmy. So Timmy just likes big, cool. Yeah, it's like the kind of guy who goes and watches Fast and Furious for the ridiculous, over-the-top action stuff, which appeals to that kind of player. And then you've got like the Spike, and they're like this uber competitive 1v1 me on COD, bro. I'm the best sniper shot in the entire game. I can quick scope your ass from halfway across the map. Like
kind of like
they've got
Shaun,
that,
but more less so like against other people and more just against the game itself. Oh shit! I just said your last name. I just said your last name. Sorry. You'll have to cut
you
that out.
fucked up.
I did.
Well, now you're fired.
Yeah. There's a point wherein like Spike is very competitive, wants to win all the comps, wants to play a meta game, wants to run the best build, wants to run the best deck like thing. And then you've got the other person who builds decks like to be thematic because there's so many cards. They want to like make a story out of their own deck. They want to have it to be swamp themed. I only want swamp creatures like frogs and things. I only want these colors in this particular deck, not because they do these different things inside of the game's mechanics, but because I want to create a story with my own game. Like I want to, make this deck as more of an artistic pursuit, or I want to be able to make it thematically interesting.
So
right?
what do you?
And so there's like these. What I'm trying to say is that they had this figured out in early 2000s when it came to their audience. They knew their players enough because they hosted tournaments, bro. Like they had a whole bunch of stuff, and they looked into the casual market and everything, and they sort of had a rough stereotype of the kinds of people that played Magic and how they played it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of like measuring stick or that kind of ruler would be really interesting and really useful to kind of look at. And I'm sure this happens. I'm sure this is like a big brainstorming thing that happens in video games and stuff as well. Because you've got different kinds of gamers. You've got people like Shaun, and Shaun's out here like, I'm a completionist, right? So he's going to get the platinum. He's going to platinum it every time. If he likes the game, he's going to platinum it. And also and he likes to play for a challenge. So some people just really like playing super hard shit for the bragging rights of saying, I beat all the Dark Souls games, or I beat Dead Cells, or I did this, or I did that. Like they play really hard games for the bragging rights. So they can be really good at the thing. And then you got people like, say for instance, more like me maybe, more like you, Ben, who we like playing for the fun of it, right? So we just like to sit down, switch our brain off, casually just sort of enjoy a little loop, like just have a bit of fun with it. The story's cool, this is cool, that's cool. Like we're not super whatever about it. So we're just going to sort of sit down, switch our brains off and have a bit of dumb fun with it. Yeah. And then you got like your simulation nerds, people who buy racing wheels and play rally games, those kinds of people.
Yeah.
And then you've got other people who are like really into, the experience is what it's all about. Like there are these different categories of people, and I think it's the same with the moviegoer, really. Yeah. Some people just want to watch dumb action films. Some people just want to watch really intelligent, well-crafted character pieces. Some people really want to watch just bad shit to rag on it, right? Like, there's not really an abundance of kind of good bad movies anymore because even if they're made on a budget, it's like, well, we can't commercially sell this. It's going to get ripped by the critics, and we can't possibly turn this out. But it's like Marvel exists, so But it's like there are people who just watch movies to switch their brain off. There are people who watch movies to really enjoy movies because they love the craft. There's people who love watching movies to fucking shit on them. Like there is always going to be these kinds of categories, and I think that with that in mind, when people are designing an experience, and when I say an experience, I mean that across the board with all media, in each different kind of thing, a lot of people, maybe creatives now, have lost focus on who does this appeal to. So it's not just the case of we need to write good stories, but it's who is our audience? What is our relationship with our audience? What are we trying to do?
I worry about, though. I think that's almost like the worst part of it is that all the focus is about the audience and basically making everybody, well, maybe not so much about the audience, but making everyone happy. It's like we've got to have everything in this game, and it's like you just can't make a product that's going to. I think everybody.
You need to aim for like the audience that you're.
You need it to be a particular, like for example, like Dark Souls is a very particular kind of audience. You're going to attract a certain kind of gamer to that kind of game. And FromSoft know that, and they're not going to fuck around with that formula. They basically, that's why Elden Ring was so successful, is they're like, we have a formula, it fucking works. If you don't want to play it because you don't like hard games like this, you don't have to play it, but we're just basically going to take Dark Souls and make it 12 times bigger. And that's, Elden Ring. And people... If it's that good, people will actually change their habits and their behaviors around certain media in order to experience that. Like I know a lot of people that like had never played a Souls game and then played Elden Ring because everyone was like, it's just that fucking good. And I feel like it's similar with films, you know what I mean? Like even people, like I know a lot of like movie critics and stuff like that, who are always very like heady and quite left leaning and stuff like that. A lot of them had to just be like, yeah, Top Gun's a fucking awesome movie. Like I know I feel like wrong for saying it because it feels like I'm encouraging military propaganda, but it's a fucking great movie.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like a similar and they're not
Regardless of how like whatever you do or put into it, certain things are just going to appeal more to certain people, and I think that like if the filmmakers or like the crew behind it just understand that and kind of focus more on aiming for that certain audience, it'll work better than if they try and pander towards everyone.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
I know you had a time limit that you were done, Ben.
I do have to head off in about 20 minutes, so I might have to
Okay.
cut off.
So,
Sorry, it's a shame because I'm absolutely having a blast to chat.
yeah, no, this was a good one, but we don't want to keep Ben from his important life stuff. You know, we're not all cave dwellers like me and Pete.
Oh, sheesh. No.
Yeah. All right, guys. It's been a great time. Let's do this again very soon.
Do you have any
quite
sort of
exciting.
formalities for wrapping it up or anything like that, or is it just?
What's no, man, no formalities. No. Yeah, no. We just we sit here and we scream into the void consistently, hoping one day someone will actually happen. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, we just hard cut on us screaming.
Yeah, exactly. No, guys, thanks for
no, but yeah, if anyone's made their way through the whole thing, then
been awesome. Thank you for.
Yeah, we'll have you any time of the week, mate. No problems at all.
No, because you said my last name. We'll think about it. Oh, you'll get a letter in the mail, maybe.
Okay, a cease and desist in the mail.
All right. Thanks very much for listening. If you got this far, you're a champion, and we will be posting more of these. So that is both a promise and a threat. Have a good one, guys. Look after yourselves.
Stay tuned for Ben-related content. Ben will be making the only videos on the channel from now on.
All right.